All right, I want to say peace or ETM Hotep. Welcome everybody to our YouTube channel, the Seshu Ma'ani Medu Netcher. This is your brother Wujau, and I'll be running point for this evening session. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, then make sure you subscribe. Most likely you are subscribed. You got the notification, and if not, make sure you click the bell so you'll be notified when we go live. Until we get back into the groove of consistent broadcasts and sessions. So we're trying to build back up our Freestyle Friday and consistent with our Freestyle Friday, even if we don't actually do a freestyle. So, you can pretty much expect us to be on Friday nights in the evening around about this time, between 8 and 9. And so we're going to incorporate the Welcome to the Sabaite Dome, Divine Words Wednesdays, and Freestyle Fridays at least once a week. All right, so we want to be consistent because we gotten emails, and I know I've been inboxed. People are asking, when are we going to do the shows again? And believe it or not, some people are want our shows to be longer, and that's like surprising. Because I've always been accused of being very long-winded, and I have the nickname of MC Iron Lung because I talk so much, and so I'm trying to reduce it, and so I have some people saying, wait a minute, your show should be longer, so kind of got to mix it up and meet in the middle somewhere. All right, so anyway, again, welcome to our channel. Share this link on your social media pages and things for people who may be interested in our discussion tonight. And tonight would normally be a Freestyle Friday, but we just want to have an open discussion. And so we refer to it as AMA, or Ask Me Anything, which is really Ask Us Anything. So you have that should be AUA, not AUS in the title. Ask Us Anything. And, we just want to have a conversation on some of the different topics that come up in relation to ancient Egypt or Kemet. All right. And if you have any questions, we could pay attention to the chat and you can ask your questions. But in order for us to really see your question, put the @ symbol and then the name Seshu in front of it. And then you'll see Seshu Mani Medu Netcher will pop up. Click on it so that your question will be highlighted so we can actually see it. Because many times in the chat, some people are talking to each other and we have to scroll through that and we may miss a question. So if you have a question, you can prep it by putting the @ symbol and then the word Seshu in front of it. And then you will click on the username for our channel. All right. So, but what you see on the screen, we like to start off our sessions with a recitation of the offering formula. And so that's what you see on the screen. And but before I do that, let's see, who do I have with me? We have Sunjun and Sunshan. So I don't know if you all want to introduce yourselves real quick before we move forward.
ETM Hotep, Rennie Sean, welcome in peace. My name is Sean. Like Saber said earlier, like the show, share the show. Tell a friend, tell a friend. Let's all get active in this build tonight.
All right. Sunjun, are you available? All right, he may not be. Because I know June is on the West Coast, and so the time zone is different. So people are in transit, driving, and things like that. So a few of the members may chime in as we have our discussion. But before we move forward,
Hotep, this is your brother June. I just made it back in.
Okay.
I just want to say peace and greetings to everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate the support. And as usual, I hope you leave with satisfaction. So thanks for tuning in. Hotep.
All right, there you go. Okay, give me 1 second here. I want to Make sure everyone can see who's all in here when we actually speak. All right. But before we move forward, I'm going to do a quick recitation of what you see on the screen, which is called a Hotep di Nasu, or an offering formula. And these are very prolific text all throughout Kemet, throughout its entire duration of its existence. For over 3,000 years, you will see variations of this particular offering formula. Some shorter than this one that you see, and some of them longer. Okay, they can get very long, or they can be a little shorter than this. This is a good one to take a screenshot of it and to practice it yourself. Practice with the glyphs that you see at the top. Practice pronouncing the transliteration in terms of Egyptological speech. And just as a little side note, when we pronounce these words, these ancient Egyptian words, in modern times, our pronunciations are not to ever be seen as historically accurate. The way that they're pronounced today is not meant to be taken as if it's the way it was pronounced in historical or ancient times. All right. So if you were ever wondering that, then hopefully that will clarify that. Or if you see anyone makes that claim, you can make sure you correct them. Our pronunciations are strictly conventional today. And we've done many shows on this topic, but I'll say again that our pronunciations today do not prevent us from knowing the meaning of a word. And just as a quick demonstration of that fact is that you can read the bottom paragraph that you see on the screen. You can read that without ever uttering a sound. And we commonly refer to that as read to yourself. If you read that bottom paragraph to yourself, don't open your mouth, don't make a sound. You can read that without pronouncing anything, and you can understand it. So pronunciation of something does not dictate its understanding of meaning. And I just want everyone to be clear on that. And we go into detail on that issue in our rebuttal book to whether or not the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system has been deciphered. Okay, so we go into detail. If you want to know more about that, definitely pick up the book. Okay, so let me recite the offering formula. Hotep di Nasu, Waser neb Jadu, Netcher a neb abju, di f pret keru, ti henket ka aped sesh menchet, ket nebet neferet wabet, anket netcher im, in kani imaku aku makeru. All right, so that I just basically recited what you see in the glyphs. All right, and you can read the translation on the bottom for yourself. All right, and we've done a whole show on the offering formula to give people some insight on what it is, why it's so prolific, and what it means. You know, what did it really involve? So we did a show on that. So definitely check out the archives for that. All right. Now I do want to make an announcement that I'm gonna share my screen here. We are starting a brand new beginners class group. Okay, I had made mention of it before. I gave forewarning to people to let them know that I was starting a beginners class group in August. And so here we are, we're at August 9th. We're in the beginning of the second week of August. And so now I'm making the announcement officially here so you all can understand and see that we are starting a beginner's introduction to Egyptian hieroglyphic, a new class group. So if you are a first timer, you know, this is your first time dealing with the language and everything like that, you're more than welcome to register to the class. And even if you are already familiar with the language somewhat and you need a refresher, you know, you may have studied it years ago and you would like to just have a refresher and kind of go through a systematic beginner's course, then hey, you're welcome. Everyone is welcome to register and sign in. But I just want to share a little bit of information about the course. One, the course is $130, and that's including the textbook. Okay, Now, some people have already purchased this book through Amazon at some other time, and for those people who've done that, then the course is only $100. Okay, so it's $130, includes the book, only $100 if you already have the book. Okay, and when you register, if you have the book, you put in the coupon code, and then it will take that $30 off. All right, so that's very simple enough. But I'm just going to read the overview of the course, so what it's about, and I'll just read, and you all can read with me on the screen. The Beginner's Introduction to Egyptian Hieroglyphic is a 10-lesson online self-paced study course with email help and support. This method provides a progressive learning schedule at your own pace. You will also have access to weekly live interactive sessions with the teacher and fellow students. So what that means is that you can walk through the book in, of course, in sequential order according to the chapters. It's 8 chapters in the book. You can go through that at your own pace. But then once a week, we meet online for live interaction. So it'll be a teacher, which is myself, and hopefully another Sesh member will also assist in that. And we meet with the other fellow students who are registered, who are part of the group, and then we go over any information in any of the chapters that the students are in. And so we have those sessions, and they are usually 2 hours long. So we meet once a week for 2 hours, and it's basically open for any questions you may have while you're going through the book, clarification, and all that kind of stuff. And we have some really, really good conversations because we give some more cultural insight to the culture of Kemet by way of its language. So we kind of give, a bigger picture and kind of gives a little substance to why we're actually learning the language and why it's, why we feel it should be learned. All right. So those are weekly interactions. To continue, the Beginner's Introduction to Egyptian Hieroglyphic course is an introductory course to the ancient Egyptian writing system, indigenously known as Sesh Netcher, and most people call it hieroglyphs or hieroglyphic, and the ancient Egyptian language, indigenously known as Rani Kemet. We aim to give a very straightforward introduction for anyone first encountering hieroglyphs. So again, for anybody who's brand spanking new, or those who need a refresher. The content of the course is complementary to the textbook A Beginner's Introduction to Medew Netcher, and you're able to proceed through the course at your own pace. So again, we know people are busy, people are working, and you may have to, go through it at your own pace. Some people may have time and go through it faster than others. So we accommodate both sides. You just go at your own pace. Now, the weekly sessions are geared towards answering any questions or concerns about anything in the book. And so it tends to go in chronological order as well, because most people have the similar pace that they're learning through the book and everything. But like I said, it's open for any questions and of any of the material in the book. And we do a thorough job of explaining, demonstrating, showing graphs, diagrams, and all kinds of things. All right. So the requirements, one, you have to be interested, obviously, and your time. And let me make sure that I am being heard. Okay, yeah. That would have been very weird. All right. So yeah, you have to be interested. So you have to have your interest in your time. So you have to have some time. You have to set aside some time for this. All right. And of course you have to have the textbook, because it's textbook that we're using for the course. So whether, like I said, if you've purchased it separately sometime in the past, or you get it with the course, that's up to you. And so the schedule. So now online. Now this is an online course. So you can, when you register, you'll have access to all of the lessons, and each chapter has a set of exercise questions that you can basically quiz yourself and see if you have retained the information, see if you comprehend everything, and before you move forward to the next and to the next and to the next. So you'll have access to the information anytime. And there's 10 online modules related to each consecutive chapter of the book. And then also we have, like I said, the weekly interactive sessions with a teacher and fellow students. And I'm going to tell you, that is the best learning environment, because even trying to learn on your own, you can buy all the books in the world and you study and learn by yourself. It's not as beneficial as learning with fellow students, forming a study group or having somebody else who's doing the same thing as you. And what's even extra is to have a teacher available to answer questions, give definitive answers, and point you in the right direction and everything like that. So that's what we offer. That's what takes place. So lastly, what's covered. So here are the topics that we cover in the beginners course. So we talk about the history of the language and writing system. So we give, a brief history about it. The language family and how scholars divide the language up. We talk about that. We talk about the different scripts that are used to write the language. You'll learn the direction of reading and writing. You'll learn some information about pronunciation and the ordering of language. You'll learn about the sign types or glyph types and the transliteration systems. You also have to learn how to look up words in dictionaries, so you'll be taught about that. And you'll be taught about how to use sign lists or glyph lists and vocabulary. Okay? And then inevitably, you have to learn a little bit of the grammar. Even at a beginner's level, you have to learn some of the grammar basics. Nothing too heavy, but at least the basics, so that you can ultimately, by the end of this course, you want to have the ability to transliterate and translate some basic inscriptions. So if you go to a museum and you see an inscription on the wall, you want to be able to have some familiarity with that. Okay. You also have to learn how to break up words and sentences because of the nature of the writing system, and we go into that. You'll learn about numbers and dates, royal names, the offering formulas, and you'll be able to decipher simple inscriptions, whether it's from coffin, tombs, or temples, etc. Okay, so that's basically what you'll learn in a nutshell. And going through this course, I can say that you definitely will be able to transliterate and translate basic inscriptions. All right, we see to it that you're able to do that. If you complete the course, you will receive a certificate. And these certificates are not given out easy. We're very stingy with the certificates. So if you pass the course and you pass all the quizzes from each of the chapters and your final exam and all that good stuff, you'll receive a certificate, and you will definitely be guaranteed that you can transliterate and translate basic inscriptions. Nothing heavy, because that's for the next level, where we have a separate class or study course with the Egyptian grammar. All right, and everything about the grammar. Okay, but on this beginner's level, you have to learn some grammar basics. Okay, it's like pronouns, adjectives, substantives, or people call nouns, and little things like that. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to share that with you all, and we are starting that. So if you're interested, register as soon as you can, as soon as possible, because I'm going to be sending out a mass email to those who are returning from a previous study course. Oh, and by the way, anyone who's ever registered to this course before, at any point, as long as we've been offering this, as long as I've been teaching it and whatnot, if you want to join in on this course, you're more than welcome to. So because a lot of people will start off and they may register and they may, they have the book and they may come to a few sessions, but then something in their time or scheduling on the job or whatever will kind of prevent them from continuing. for whatever the reason is. And so I've received inboxes and requests for people to want to come back and join back in. So everyone is welcome. So I expect this August for this class group for us to start off another one. I expect it to be big. So I want to give everyone a chance to be notified that we're starting up again, and everyone is welcome. Okay, whether you're new or you're returning. So I want everybody to be involved. So I'm gonna give that some time. So if you're interested, register now. And those people who are returning, the previous class I just had, if you're returning, I'm gonna work out a special reduction. So it's not gonna be 130 for those folks. All right. But I will let them know. But please spread the word. Anybody who you feel is interested in learning the language, and from a competent and proficient teacher, then make sure you spread this spread the word, and share the link. All right. So not to say that there's definitely competent teachers out there that are also teaching, for sure. We have Benachi Montgomery, Dr. Rakete Amen, Brother Sanjeti, are the ones that I know of. Well, Dr. Rakete Amen, of course, Benachi Montgomery, of course, and they also do online correspondence. Brother Sanjeti teaches face-to-face, in person, and those are the three that I usually will make mention of for people to, because if they can't sign up for this course, or for whatever reason the scheduling is off, but they still want to do it, and they may be able to coincide with a schedule that others are offering, then hey, by all means, make sure you get that done. All right. Okay. So just wanted to make that announcement, and again, spread the word. And let me bring it back on to here. All right. And I may remind everyone, mention again at the end of our show, but now we can get into a discussion. So we're going to have an open discussion. And so I'm going to start paying attention to the chat. So again, I want to say ETM Hotep for those who have joined in after I greeted everyone. So I'll greet you again with peace. Hopefully you're satisfied, and stay satisfied, and leave satisfied when we're done. But if you have, so tonight's show is open discussion, and it's ask us anything. So, but of course, when I say anything, it's related to Egypt or Kemet and the language and everything. You don't ask me about fixing a broken part on your car or anything like that. Yeah, because I'm definitely no good. But so yeah, but before I do that, anybody on the panel, you have anything you want to bring up, open up with, or anything? June or Sean?
Nah, I'm about to comb through and see if we can get some of these good questions.
Okay, yeah. So, and that, sometimes I open up the panel, and have everyone come in. But if I see the chat growing, I may do that. But for now, we could pay attention to the chat. So if you have a question, so let me remind you all, if you have a question or you need clarification for anything, and if you've seen any of our videos and something's confused you, or you feel you may need more information about, or you may have information that may be contrary to something we've said, we welcome all of that. We welcome critique. We welcome criticism. We welcome correction. We welcome the sharing of information. We welcome all of it, whatever, A to Z. If you want to give thanks, if you want to curse, all that stuff, it's okay. But if you have a question, make sure you put the @ symbol and then the name Seshu after, so we can see your question. All right. So, because I know people have conversations with themselves in the chat. So this is an interactive show tonight, y'all. So we need your interaction. No question. Well, I'm not gonna say that. I stopped saying that. No question is a stupid question, a dumb question. I have to I have to take that back because you know some people will put a string of words together and think that just because they put a question mark at the end of that string of words that they have an actual well-formed or sensible question. So I don't really say that, but um, just ask away. But in the meantime,
We had a few questions pop up already
okay,
in the
okay,
chat.
okay. Let me scroll up. Are you looking at them now? Can you read them? Or
Yeah,
okay,
the first one was from um excuse me if I mispronounce your name, Nusray Hakim, or Kaim, and he asked, "Can we definitely say that the Netcher script was intentionally meant to rhyme in any way? It seems poetic, metaphorically, and also to rhyme at times."
okay. That's a good question. And the answer is no. It was not. The script was not meant to rhyme because you have to. Okay, let me start. Let me say it this way: that a writing system is a visual representation of speech, of what's spoken. So the writing system was created or invented to visually reflect that which they were already speaking. So we have to understand that they were speaking. Human beings have been speaking for thousands of years prior to writing. Writing is very young. Writing was invented approximately 5,500 years ago. And the oldest writing system, official, like formal writing system, is in Kemet, dating back to 3350 BCE, give or take. And so the writing system was the people's way of encoding what they were speaking into a visual format. And so it wasn't written, it wasn't invented to rhyme if they weren't already rhyming when they spoke, as they spoke way prior to the writing system. So the answer to that is no, because when they were speaking, when you read the text, they don't rhyme. A lot of the texts don't rhyme. Now, there are texts that do rhyme, that are intentionally rhyming, because they're hymns. There are poems and there are hymns that have verses and written in those different styles where you'll see. As a matter of fact, let me show you all the offering formula again. And
Right, because that question kind of came after you were done reading.
okay, so here's the offering formula. And so some of these formulas are what scholars call spells, and we don't want to really call them spells because of what our idea today of what spells are. So I don't encourage everyone to call them spells in that sense. But these offering formulas, the hymns and so-called spells, some of them will have a cadence to them, a rhythm that will be similar to poetry or some kind of hip hop song or whatever the case is. You could throw a beat on and then start reciting. But when I recited this earlier, this is why we use this one in particular, because it's easy to memorize because it has a cadence to it. So for example, Hotep di Nasu, Weser Neb Jedu. So you see how that has a little rhyme or cadence. Hotep di Nasu, Weser Neb Jedu, Netcher A Neb Abju. And then you have Diet Puret Keru. So Nesu, Jedu, Abju, Keru, they kind of rhyme, and you can put a cadence to that. So then you got the list. You got T, Henket, Ka, Apet, Sesh, Minket. Those are a list of things. Bread, beer, steak, basically saying steak and chicken and some clothing and some utensils. That's really what those are. So T is bread, Henket, beer, Ka is what do you call it? Ox and things. Apet is bird, but we would call it chicken today. Sesh and Minket are clothing items and utensils and and things like that. Alabaster. So that's what those things are. So that's a list of things. So you'll see that. So T Hinket, Ka Apet, Sesh Minket. And then you have this thing that kind of rhymes on the third line. Ket nebet neferet wabet. So Ket nebet neferet wabet. So all good and pure things. Ket nebet neferet wabet. All good and pure things. And then Anket Netcher im, which is upon which a God lives. Then you have Inkani imaku aku makeru. So Inkani imaku aku makeru. And so that has like a rhyming thing or cadence. But now that word aku in here, you can't see my cursor. But on the fourth line, when I say Inkani imaku, that next word aku, that word will be replaced by a person's name. Because the word aku is a generic word for ancestors. But you want to name an ancestor when you recite this yourself. So you say Inkani Maku and then name someone and then say Ma'akeru. But this one rhymes because of the word aku. So Inkani Imaku Aku Makeru. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. So the short answer is no. The writing system was not written to rhyme, because a writing system simply encodes what is spoken. And the Egyptians didn't walk around rhyming, all the time and everywhere, So, but there are situations where inscriptions do or will rhyme, and have a cadence to it because it's written as a hymn or a song or, things like that. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. All right. So what, was there anything else?
Yeah, we had another one from our brother Chavez Shidi Makuru McCrae. And he asked, how were certain phonetic sounds mapped for Sesh that wasn't on the Rosetta Stone?
Okay. Well, first, I would definitely recommend that you get our text, the rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams, or, has the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system been deciphered? A rebuttal to Professor Walter Williams, because in that book you'll find more details than I'm prepared to, go into on this live stream. So, and that's the reason why I wrote the book. But to kind of give you a gist answer is that the Rosetta Stone was not the only text that was used in the full decipherment process. Most people will know about the Rosetta Stone, just like most people will know about Champollion. That's all that most people will know about, because that's the most repeated person and the repeated artifact. The Rosetta Stone and Jean-Francois Champollion. That's what's popular, so people will hear about that, but they don't know about all the other people that were involved and the other inscriptions that was involved. You had an obelisk that was involved. You have a whole nother stone that was much more complete than the Rosetta Stone, which is called the Canopus Stone. And most people don't really know about that stone. And I was surprised that when we did the book and we talked about it, that so many people had no idea about this second stone that was complete, because the Rosetta Stone was missing the top portion, and I don't even think people realize that. Although if you look it up, you'll see that the whole top portion is missing, but the Canopus Stone is fully intact. Nothing wrong with it. Today it has a big crack through it, but it's nothing missing. And so between these two stones, between the other artifacts, there was much more than the Rosetta Stone that was used. So, so I just want to, let you know about that, and, pick up our book if you want to know more, because we go into detail. We go into all the people that were involved, how they saw the writing system at first and how things changed, who was the first person to think that it was these glyphs represented sounds, because most people at the time thought it represented just concepts and ideas and some kind of mystery, some mysterious stuff, things like that. So we go into detail about that in the book. All right, so hopefully I kind of answer your question enough to where, and then you get the book for all the details. All right. So,
He had another question. Once again from Chavez Shivi Ma Kuru McCrae.
all right.
And he asked, what is the etymological meaning of the term? And he has K capital A S. So maybe cost. There's K capital A S. What is the etymological meaning of the term cost? Maybe he's
Yeah, he would have to. Well,
yeah.
let me say this. Because a lot of times people over time, a lot of people will inbox me and ask me what do certain words mean, and they will type out the way that people pronounce it, or they'll type out some transliteration system, and I always have to tell people to produce the glyphs if at all possible, because the way the writing system works, we would have to see the glyphs, because there are a lot of words that will be transliterated the exact same. And so let me give you an example of that. Let me see if I have something fast that I can show. Okay, I'll show something quick. And because this is important, because I try to explain this to everyone, and I do it on an individual basis, and I've covered it in some of these videos, but I think every chance I get, I need to reiterate it, because I still get these questions, and it's no problem, but I always like to inform everyone. Just give me a moment. I'm trying to pull it up so I can show you all what I'm talking about as I'm saying it. So let's see if I can find it real fast here. Let's see. Okay, here we go. All right, so here's a good example. And you all should be able to see my screen. So, June, can you see my screen?
Yeah, example of 4 words with the verb.
Okay. All right. So here's the reason why this is very important. And so make sure that you all who are seeing this for the first time or whatever, make sure you understand and pass this on. Okay. In the writing system, we have what's called determinatives, and determinatives are what scholars call determinatives. They're glyphs that are strictly an orthographic feature. They're only for the writing system because it's not transliterated and it's not pronounced. Okay, and these are glyphs that come at the end of words. So it's like the final glyph of a word. And so scholars call them determinatives. And what that does is, for the reader, it allows us to know the differences between completely different words, where otherwise, if these determinatives did not exist, these words will look exactly alike. And we call those homographs. Okay, homographs are words that are spelled alike, but they have different meaning, and they're different words. Okay. So what I'm showing on the screen is an example of 4 words that are different from each other, and it's reflected in these last glyphs. You see this last glyph of a door on its side, so it looks kind of weird to us, but it's on its side. We have walking legs, we have a sparrow, and we have hair. So each one of these determinatives will give a semantic clue to what the word means. But now when we transliterate these words, all 4 of them will be transliterated the exact same way. WN, 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 WN. And we will pronounce them all the same today. When. Now in ancient times, we don't know what the vowels are, so it may not have been pronounced the same at all. It may be this one may be Woon. This one may be Wan. This one may be Wan. This one may be, Won or something. So we don't know what the vowels are that are in between these consonants. So today we pronounce them all the same. Win. But anyway, each of these words are different. So this first one, win, with this determinative means open, and it's determined by a door. The next one means to hurry. The next one is a fault or blame. Next one is to strip away, to pull off, to strip off something. Okay, so these are different words, but they contain the same first two glyphs, but they have different determinatives, but they transliterate the same. So I say all of that to say that when people come and ask, well, what does this mean? We have to see the glyphs, because I could, like, if somebody asked me, what does WN mean? See, I can most likely I would probably give them a wrong answer, because I have four choices, and there's more. I just put four for this example, but there are a lot of words that will have these two consonants in it as the words, and so I would be doing a disservice by trying to answer that question without giving that clarification. So so to the brother that asks, what does KAS mean? You have to show the glyphs. Now, I know you can't show the glyphs on YouTube, and this is where another aspect comes into play. If you can give me the Gardner codes for the glyphs you're talking about, then we could work with that. Okay, because I know you can't draw the glyphs on YouTube, and I know you're not gonna type them on YouTube, but that's why Gardner codes are useful. Give me the Gardner codes for those glyphs, and then we can work with that. All right, so hopefully, because it sounds like saying Kaz or Kosh, which is the and I don't know, but Kosh could possibly be the place that people know as Kush, because Egyptians call Kush Kosh. All right, but that S would be a sh sound, and it'd be capital S in transliteration. All right, so with any other ones?
Yes, we do have some more. So appreciate it, y'all, bringing some good questions so far. The next question is from Marcel Amenhotep. They ask, explain the relationship between Kemet and Punt. I've read that a lot of Egyptians from that area near Somalia. So what's your opinion based on your research? And what was Queen Hatshepsut's business there?
Oh, okay. Let me see. Anybody else come on the panel yet? Because I'm doing all the talking. Okay, it's just us three.
I can give. Let me give.
Yeah, go for it.
I can answer a little bit. I mean, not really the questions, but kind of suggestions. I know our brother Asar Imhotep has done some work on the meaning of punt and maybe the location or locations. So I would say, check out his work. And also, when it comes to understanding the meaning of what the Egyptians said or thought, it's going to take a lot of research. So I also would suggest, as advertised earlier, to take that class. Learning the language is going to give you the solid foundation you need to build on the rest of the information and knowledge that you get. You don't want to get so far in and get stuck on something because you don't really fully understand the language yet. So that would be another main suggestion, is build that solid foundation with learning the basics of the language, and then move on to learning more deeper stuff. Because a few of our questions, our brother Asar Imhotep has a lot of work on it, and he also offers a class. But once again, I would advise to learn the basics and start at the beginning level with a solid foundation. So I really didn't answer the questions directly. Maybe you can continue, but I'll repeat it. It says, once again, from Marcel Amenhotep, explain the relationship between Kemet and Punt. I've read that a lot of Egyptians from that area near Somalia.
So what's your opinion based on your research? And what was Queen Hatshepsut's business there?
Okay, yeah. Now Punt, in terms of its definitive location, scholars are kind of got a little play with that because of the items that were returned or extracted from Punt or Punwet, as some people may pronounce it. So the scholars are not all in agreement on something definitive when it comes to that. But we do know that it's we can kind of trace out a certain region, and so there's been proposals where it's on the coast of the Red Sea, where you have Somalia, Eritrea, Somalia, Ethiopia, and so that kind of area there, all the way far down as Kenya, and things because of the actual items that were said to be harvested or traded and things from that area. And so you had different expeditions. So the most famous would be Hatshepsut when it comes to Punt. So you can't mention Punt without mentioning Hatshepsut, really, because she has one of the biggest expeditions in that area. And it was very, very popular. During her reign as king, Egypt was doing good, so people need to be aware of that. Like, Egypt, Kemet thrived during her reign as king. And as a side note, be careful not to call her Queen Hatshepsut, even though she was a queen at one point, but she became king. So it is perfectly proper to call her King Hatshepsut. Okay, King Hatshepsut. It sounds weird to us today because we think of king as a man, but it would be proper to call her King Hatshepsut. Okay, Nisut Biti Hatshepsut, or Nisut Biti Ma'at Kara would be her throne name. Ma'at Kara we refer to as Hatshepsut, which is her family name. But keep that in mind. But now the relationship is because Punt was a resource for Kemet. And in ancient times like it is today, a state polity protects its resources. And so Kemet was very protective of where it got its outside resources from, because a lot of resources came from inside of Kemet, but then there were quite a few resources that had to come from outside of Kemet. And that knowledge and that trade and the routes and those locations of where those resources were was basically kept under wraps. They didn't want anybody violating that, and then that's what kept Kemet a step above everyone else. Okay, and once those trade secrets and once those locations were found out on a larger and larger and larger scale, that's when you have some problems in Kemet, in the administration, and in the strength of the kingdom itself. So this is ancient politics, y'all. No different than today, but taking place in ancient times, where a country's interest and resources were like a guarded secret. Okay, so that's why today we don't have a definitive place that we could say, hey, here is Punt, right here, because it was guarded like that. But there's a lot of clues, and so we have a general area. So the relationship with Punt, and the same thing with Netcher. People want to say the land of the gods, Netcher, but Netcher is really the land of resources. And once people understand what the word Netcher really means and how it's applied in different contexts, you'll understand that Netcher would be the land of resources. And so people think it's the land of gods, but it's actually the land of resources, where the Remech, or the ancient Egyptians, they went to these different places, and it wasn't one. It wasn't just one Netcher. It was in a few places where they would get their resources from. And so again, these were guarded, what we would call today guarded secrets. All right, so sorry, I can't tell you exactly where Punt was and give you the longitude, latitude coordinates, but we have a general idea of the area based on the objects, the incense, the animals, and the what do you call it, the plant life and things that were brought back, the trees, the different things that were brought back. We know where they grew in these certain climates and areas. Okay, so that's how we can get a good ballpark guess. All right. So I guess the shortest answer is to say I don't know exactly where punt is. I'll be quick to tell you that, but like I said, we have a good idea though. Let's see, anything else? Cause I don't know if I've scrolled up too fast for me. Let's see.
Yeah, we have one from. Once again, excuse me if I mispronounce your name. This is from Yashur L, and they ask, I've heard from Brother Garfield that the Netcher has its own form of gematria. If so, can you explain how it works?
Well, I don't know how that would apply. So I would, that's kind of, I would have to hear, I guess, kind of, see what Garfield said about that. So if you heard something from Garfield, that'd probably be a better question to ask him what he meant by it, but in terms of Sesh Netcher, the way the writing system works is that each glyph can potentially function in one of three ways in any particular word. And those three ways are as a phonograph, which means it represents sound, where you have to detach what you're looking at. So it's not useful for the image itself. It's used for the sound it represents. Glyphs can also be used as what we call logographs, which means that they represent words in the language. And then they also could be used for what scholars call determinatives. And it helps determine the meaning of the word. And then you also have the concept of ideographs, which are ideas. But people confuse ideographs and logographs, and they kind of blur those two together. But those are the possible ways. Now, in terms of what you're asking about, you probably have to get some clarification from Garfield first, and then maybe we could probably make sense of that. So,
okay, we have another one. Once again, this from Nayusare Kaim. They ask, I've read that there is some undeciphered Netcher glyphs that I think came from the Valley of the Kings, 12 hours of the Duat. Not sure if that's the exact location. Respect.
Okay, repeat that one more time.
Yeah, I've read that there are some undeciphered Netcher glyphs that I think came from the Valley of the Kings, 12 hours of the Duat. Not sure if that's the exact location. Respect.
Okay. I'm not familiar with what that is at this moment, unless and I know they can't show a picture of it or anything, or provide a link or something where we could see what's being talked about. Because you have to understand. So this is the thing. The hieroglyphic writing system has been deciphered. So we can't say anything has been undeciphered. And so although it may seem like we're being kind of meticulous, or what do you call it, a stickler for this, we have to make sure that we use these terms properly, okay? Because what some people mean when they say undeciphered, they really mean untranslated. And there's a difference between decipherment and translation. To translate something versus to decipher something. When you decipher something, you're trying to ascertain how the spoken language was mapped to what you see. And when you translate something, translation is a semantic endeavor. You're trying to take a meaning from a source language and bring it over, which is the word trans, to bring it over into a target language. The meaning, okay? And so that's the two different things. And then you have transliteration, which is even different than those two. Transliteration is simply swapping a script from a source script over into a target script. So that's an orthographic endeavor. All right. So, these are different things. So we have to have understanding. So if there are words that are untranslated, then that's a different story than something that has not been deciphered. That's a different thing. And the writing system has been deciphered. So maybe that's what's meant. There are words that scholars may not know the meanings to. And there's quite a few words that are like that. We know what it's referring to, but we may not know its meaning. So I'm gonna give you an example. The word, let's see. I'll just give you a quick example. The word Kash for the place we know is Cush. The Egyptians call that place Kash. Now we know it's referring to a place. We know where the place is and all that stuff, but we may not know what the actual meaning of Kash is, because it may be an exonymic toponym where the people of Kash named it themselves and the Egyptians just called it the same. So it may not be an Egyptian coined word itself. Okay, so that's a little different. And even today in English, there's a lot of words that we don't know the meanings of, but we know what they refer to. And there's a difference between meaning and referent, because it may be funny, but it's not funny. A lot of parents name their children names, and they don't know what the meaning of those words are. Like, a lot of people grow up not even knowing the meaning of their own names, like all three names, first, middle, and last name. They may not know the meaning of their names, but they know who they're referring to. So when somebody calls you, like, for example, Sean, if somebody says Sean, they know who it's referring to, but they may not know the meaning of the word Sean. Like, what does the word Sean actually mean? So I'm just giving quick examples of the difference.
Yeah, he had a follow-up comment. He said definitely didn't mean undeciphered.
Okay, right. So he probably means not translated. So you have to show us. You have to show us and give give a link or post it in the group. We have a Facebook group, and the link to our Facebook group is in the description of all of our videos. So make sure you join the group. And if you're a new member and join the group because of something you heard on us talking on YouTube, make sure you preference your post with it. So post it in the group and say, hey, I was on the live stream and this is what I was talking about or whatever. Post it, and then we'll look at it, because that's what we do. Well, is there anything else? I'm scrolling.
And also, Chavez, Sheedy, Makaru, McCrae had a follow-up comment to their question. It was on the etymological meaning of KAS. Said, my bad, I meant Kush. It said KAS in my dictionary, thought it was the only word with KAS.
Oh, right. No. So yeah, that's what I thought you were referring to. And like I said, Kash, the meaning of Kash is not given. And let me say this, let me make this clear. When you look up a word in our dictionaries, in American English, so we look up Webster, you look up Oxford, these major dictionaries, when you look up words in our dictionaries, those dictionaries are giving you definitions. Now, I want you to understand that a dictionary is not called a definitionary. It's called a dictionary, because the primary focus of a dictionary is to give the diction of words. The definitions that you find in dictionaries are descriptive, and the dictions are prescriptive. Okay, that's a difference. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when you look up an English word in an English dictionary, you'll find the word, and then you'll be given definitions. But now, when you go to an Egyptian dictionary, although they call it a dictionary, they're not really giving you definitions. They're just giving you substitutes. They're giving you translations. So if you look up the word Ankh, you're going to see the word life. but it doesn't explain to you what life means. You see? So it's not a dictionary in that sense. And so we got to understand that, even though, and I don't want to get into the stickler of the semantics of it, but, we kind of have these misnomers going on where these Egyptian dictionaries are not really dictionaries. They're just giving you like these word substitutions. So you look up this and you'll see that it's in this in English, and it's not really giving you a definition of anything. But anyway, I say all that to say is that when you look up Kosh, it's going to tell you Kush. That's all it's going to tell you. Kosh is Kush, and that's it. But now, what do we know what the word Kush means? I believe that Osar Motep has done some investigation on that, so I would have to check with him. But off the top of my head, Kosh is a exonymic toponym for the place that is south of Kemet. So in other words, Kosh comes from a word that may have originated from the people that are there, not the Egyptians themselves. Same thing with the place we call Libya, Chehenu and Chemehu. The word Chehenu, we know it means Libya, or we know it's talking about west of Kemet, but the meaning Chehenu itself, the specific meaning and its etymology, is uncertain because it's likely to come from the people that were outside of Kemet. It's not a Kemetic word. It's not a Rani Kemet original or indigenous term. Okay, so we have that going on, and we just we have to have that understanding. So hopefully I kind of clarified that, but I can't answer your question though at this moment. To what does Kosh mean? All right. So I see Marcel had a question. Did the Egyptians describe themselves as big-membered the way that the Hebrews describe the Bible? I think I know what he's talking about. Well, listen, the Hebrew Israelites, they seem to be infatuated and attracted to things that are homophobic. I'm not homophobic, but homosexual, or all that kind of stuff, because they tend to describe Kemet in terms of being gay and homosexual, and that's their focus. And when they talk about it, they try to cite a few scenes where you have these epiphalic scenes, or what they refer to as autofellatio, which was a mechanism of expression that the ancient Egyptians did in order to talk about creation, and in those times there was nothing homosexual or gay or anything about that whatsoever, not at all. Just like in the Bible, grabbing someone's thigh or groin area or kissing someone while stroking their beard and stuff may or may not have been homosexual per se, but today, looking back, and this is what we refer to as an anachronism, and we got to be careful of that, because what we do is you project a modern concept backwards in ancient times. You try to retrofit it back there, and we can't do that. We got to be very careful not to do that. An anachronist. These are people who do that, and we got to be careful. So today, a lot of things that were done in the past may be taboos today. That's still going on in different places. Like right now, you got some people, you have communities in Africa where men hold hands. And in their culture, it's completely non-gay or non-homosexual. But for us, looking at it, we don't do that. So we're like, nah. And we'll have our opinion about it and things. So we got to be careful of that. But anyway, I know that's where Marcel's talking about in terms of the Hebrews referring to Negroes as big-membered and as a curse. Actually, they say that our curly hair, big lips, and for men, I guess, big penises are due to a curse that was put on Canaan in the Bible. And these are what the biblical commentaries that you'll find that say. So, that's what's being referred to. All right. So, yeah. All right. So what else? What else we got going on?
I had saw that one too. I was gonna go over it.
Oh, yeah. Nah, because recently there's been a few videos exposing that, and I think it's good that people are aware of what these biblical scholars are describing different verses and passages in the Bible. Like, what does it mean to touch someone's thigh in the Bible? Like, why? What business do you have touching someone's thigh in the Bible, especially as a sign of loyalty and fealty to a people? And so they explain it that you actually touching on the genitals, and so Hebrew Israelites have to contend with that, but yet they look over to Egypt and want to call Egypt gay and this and that when it's not. Autofellatio in and of itself is not even gay or homosexual, because by definition, a homosexual act would have to involve a person of the same sex. So by their logic, then masturbation would be homosexual.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. That's wild.
But regardless, that's not the intent of the text. Anyway, Geb, everybody try to cite Geb and they mainly focus on Geb. They're not real people. Wasir, Osset, Nut, Geb, all of the various different Netcheru are not sentient human beings. They were not people. They're not people, and the culture understood them not to be people. So it's an instance of immaturity of people's understanding of figurative speech. You got to understand that in Africa, Africans are wholly responsible for the invention of figurative language and figurative expressions. Now we subdivide it all up into metaphors, similes, hyperboles, and all these other sub branches of figurative trope. You got all these different things, but all of it was invented by Africans in the distant past, because they did not have writing. And you have to understand that we live in a world of literacy, reading and writing. But about 6,000 years ago, it was no such thing. So imagine growing up and living in a world where there was no writing. How can you transmit a generation's worth of information to the next generation without documenting, without writing it down? So you have to create very creative ways of mnemonic devices, how to make things stick in people's memory. And so you create these mythos, you create these stories, you create all this other kind of stuff to encode it into those stories to be later decoded back into the reality for which it stands for. That's what it was about. And so, when they did have writing and stuff, that tradition still continued. And that's the way that things are done, even to this very day. Right now. I don't want to get into the subject, but I'm gonna tell y'all how we still do it to this very day is with the word spirit. People have stopped just shy of anthropomorphizing spirit or energy by describing energy as something that can do something, as an entity that can do this or that. But if you tell somebody to draw energy, they won't draw a person. They would just say it's some kind of a force that can do X, Y, and Z. So they say just short of anthropomorphizing it into a human, but they talk about it as if it's an entity when it's not. Energy is not an entity. It does not go anywhere and do anything. But that's another topic. But I'm just saying, so we still do it today. Okay, so what else we got?
The next one is for you, for my brother Robert Rand. He asked you, I think, a couple questions. He said, Ujau, I didn't get to see your response from My question to you on Garfield's Facebook Live, can you please address how Reggie is misrepresenting the argument to the elders, especially when he asked Dr. Rosalind Jeffries about the glyphs?
Oh, it's real simple. A lot of people who are trying to jump in on the conversation without first consulting, what we're saying or reading what we put forward or listening to what we say and even doing literature review. You hear people ask the question or they will make the statement and say that it's some guys that will say Kemet doesn't mean black. And that's not what we're saying. So right there from the jump, we're being misrepresented. We actually tell people the opposite. We say, we know that there is a word in the Egyptian language that has the consonants K and M that we pronounce today as Kim, that is an adjective and does have the meaning of black. That's not disputed. Like, we tell people that every day, all day. And Kemet, okay, let me explain something to you all. Let me show you this. And I want everybody to pay attention. Man, I wish, listen, if you all get what I'm saying, let me know, and I'm gonna expect you all to spread this or each one teach one type of situation. Let me do something here. Give me a moment. I'm gonna find it. I have it, and I'm gonna show you all something. All right, here we go. So let me share this. And it may seem like a long-winded answer to something that's simple, but it's important. Okay, so listen. What y'all see on the screen is at the top I have grammatical gender. All right. And so I'm gonna give y'all a very quick lesson, but I expect y'all to get what I'm saying. So in the Egyptian language, every single substantive, now mind you, substantive is the more appropriate or specific specialized term for the word noun. So what most people will call nouns, we refer to as substantives when we're doing, like detailed linguistic work. Okay, so don't be afraid of that term. So every single noun in the Egyptian language, or we refer to as substantive in the Egyptian language, is either masculine or feminine. There are no exceptions. There's no such thing as a genderless substantive in the language. Okay, now also, there are some substantives that exist in both genders. There's a masculine version of it and a feminine version of it. Okay, outside of that, every single substantive will be one or the other. They have to be. Like I said, there's no such thing as a genderless substantive. So on their own, all substantives exist in either one of those genders. So I have it on the screen. Looks like two sides of a coin. If you threw the coin up, it's going to land on heads or tails. And so that means every word you throw it up in the air is going to land on masculine or feminine. So that's the analogy I'm giving right here. Okay. Now, when it comes to adjectives are, for lack of better word, adjectives are in a state of limbo when it comes to their gender. And here's why. Because adjectives have to agree with the substantive that it is modifying. So if the substantive is feminine, the adjective will be feminine. If the substantive is masculine, the adjective will be masculine. So adjectives in and of themselves are gender limbo. They're in limbo. Only when they're used, they're actually used in a sentence or syntactic environment, will you know if it's masculine or feminine. Now, why am I saying this? The reason why I'm saying this is because Kim, the word Kim, that is an adjective that means black, it can become the word Kemet with a T on it if it is going to modify a feminine substantive. So, for example, if I want to say black book, I would say majat, which is a feminine substantive, which means book, or better yet, it means scroll or papyrus scroll, because they didn't have like books like we have. But modern time, we would say book. So the word book is the word majat, and that's a feminine substantive. And if I want to describe it as black, I would have to change Kim to Kemet to match the feminine of majat. So majat Kemet. That means black book. If I want to say red book, I would have to say majat desheret with a T on it to match the feminine substantive. Okay? So Kim as an adjective meaning black is a masculine form, and Kemet of that same subject, same adjective in a feminine will be Kemet. That's not the Kemet that we're arguing about or fussing about or even dealing with. And so this is what I mean by people not understanding the argument, but yet they got so much to say. And then when they go ask other people or present this to elders as if we're attacking elders and stuff, that's disingenuous, and that's just outright wrong. And we're telling people that it comes from ultimately bad character. People don't know how to be disciplined and humbled enough to find out what we're talking about first before opening and running their mouths. And that's what an issue is. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about the place name. And if anybody paid attention to what we say, what we actually say and have been saying all this time, inclusive of the title of our publication, it says a contribution to the meaning of what? What does it say? June, what was the title of the book?
The place name Kemet.
Exactly. We're telling people a contribution to the debate on the meaning of the place name Kemet, not the adjective Kemet or the feminine form of the adjective Kim, which will be Kemet. We're talking about the name of the kingdom, the name of the place. And so that in and of itself is a problem. And we told these people that. I personally told Reggie that on the phone, that, and he didn't even know what a toponym was when I told him this. So I'm like, well, Reggie, you're going to have to sit this one out because you don't even know what a toponym is. So don't try to argue when you don't even know what we're talking about. But he insisted. And so, the rest is what it is. It's been going on for quite a few months, since last year now. But anyway, so Robert, that's what I mean by our arguments are being misrepresented when people try to talk about it to these other folks and everything. We don't say that, and we're not attacking elders at all. And for whatever reason, these people are ignoring what we constantly repeat. And I want y'all to notice that there's a lot of stuff that is left out of the conversation, and it has to be intentional at this time, and so this is what's left out. And I'm gonna read this. I'll read it till the wheels fall off. I don't mind being repetitive on this, but I want y'all to understand this here. This is Diop's own charge before he made his transition, while he was alive, kicking it in the whole nine. This is what Diop said as a message and a charge to the upcoming scholars that coming after him. He said, I'm going to read this whole thing again. He says, now, mind you, this is an interview with Diop, and he was asked a question. You can see it at the bottom of the screen. What sort of preparations should young scholars make to undertake future studies in the field of Africology and African studies? And this is a quote of his answer. He says, I would like to see above all a greater number of researchers, Afro-Americans, young Americans, even whites. Why not? Because it's the young who are the least prejudiced. As a consequence, they are the most capable of making triumphant ideas which frighten the older generation. Also, I think that it would be necessary to put together polyvalent scientific teams capable of doing in-depth studies for sure, and that's what's important. It bothers me when someone takes me on my word without developing a means of verifying what I say. We must form a scientific spirit capable of seeing even the weaknesses of our own proofs, of seeing the unfinished side of our work, and committing ourselves to completing it. You understand? Therefore, we should then have a work which could honestly stand criticism, because what we've done would have been placed on a scientific plane. Now, for some reason, these folks that have all this talk about what the young folks are doing and accusing the young folks of attacking elders and disrespecting elders, they will never address this, because this is the charge that we are living up to. And so they can't address it and still make the claim. So that's what I mean, Robert. Yeah, that's what I mean. If that's what you're asking me. So, I know I kind of got long-winded with it, but I'm saying, this has been going on too long, and people are misrepresenting our arguments. People are lying. People are, doing all kinds of things but the right thing. All right. And it doesn't have to be that way, because our job is, because what it does, it confuses the public. We're trying to educate the public, but yet people are stepping in trying to convolute and confuse people, make things ambiguous when it's not. We're not talking about the adjective Kim. We know that there's an adjective Kim, meaning black, in the language. We know that the adjective was used to describe person, places, or things, all that other kind of stuff. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, so anyway, I know I kind of went a little long with that.
It's good that at least it's a topic of discussion. Recently, most of the time when I see someone writing Kemet, they put km.t. And when I first got into the studies a few years ago, you hardly ever seen anyone writing it as km.t. It would just be kmt, or they would spell it out as Kemet. So now it seemed like it's, I don't know if people understand why they're putting the dot before the T, but I do see it quite often now written as km.t.
Yeah, well, that's good, because it shows that what we've been saying, is starting to take root, and people are making the distinctions between different affixes in the words, or different morphemes that we discuss, and things that people are starting to pick up on it. Now, what I don't want to see is people use these things without understanding why they're using it. So we separate the endings, declensional endings on substantives with a dot. We separate suffixal endings, pronominal suffixes specifically, with an equal sign. And we do that for a reason. So, people need to come to us and ask us why we do what we do, and we'd be more than happy to explain it, so people will know why they're doing it. But anyway, so that's the gist of that. So bringing in elders, and I want to make this very clear. We say to people who try, and we only say this to people who try to step up and become an adversary, because this is the thing. It's one thing to chime in on a discussion, but to chime in on a discussion and position yourself as an opponent or as an adversary from the get-go, that's not conducive for progress. You know, like how are you going to start off by making yourself out to be an enemy or an opponent or an adversary? That's not how it's done. You first have to learn about what the conversation is about. You have to learn the context. You have to learn what the arguments are. You have to learn the information that supports the argument or not. Then you have to come to a determination whether you agree or disagree, what side of the argument you're going to be on and whatnot. But these folks, a lot of people that I see in the social community, they will start off by saying, I want to debate you. And then you ask, well, what do you want to debate me about? Well, I don't know. We'll just think of something. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. You don't like want to debate somebody and then then find out, what you disagree with. No, that's not how it works. But that's the mentality that we see. And so people take this adversarial position too early. And we're like, it doesn't have to be that way. We're not your enemy. We are addressing an issue that involves all of Egyptology. All of Egyptology. From the start of Egyptology officially, where it started with Champollion, up until today. On the meaning of the place name Kemet. So we're not attacking anyone. We're addressing something that was assumed by early Egyptologists and stuck. To this very day. They never did the work. And there's a lot of different things that are like that. Just because people use it doesn't mean that it's true. Like for a long time, you grew up thinking Christopher Columbus discovered America. There's people who still believe that. And textbooks that will still say that. Doesn't make it true. Or accurate or whatever. So anyway, that's hopefully that kind of answer that. So Robert, if you had any follow-up questions, you can go ahead and ask, but I want to make sure we get through some of these questions.
Yeah, no, he had a couple follow-up comments, and he says he absolutely gets it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We had a question from our good brother Zane Montego, and he asked, did the Remetch specify animals? Could they describe species?
Oh, specify. Okay, I thought he meant specify. Okay, I see what he's saying. So he's asking different species. Well, species. Okay, first let's define species. Our modern understanding of species and why we use species is to differentiate animals that can reproduce of themselves and produce viable offspring. And so the ancient Egyptians did not get into that level of detail of taxonomy like that. Biological taxonomy, they didn't get to that detail. They didn't have that level of detail like we do today. Okay, so to specify, as you say, animals, they made distinctions obviously with animals, but not various different species that are close together that would be determined by their viable offspring and stuff like that. Because you got to understand that they only were aware of animals that they were exposed to. Just like no one ancient culture would ever have the names of all the animals on the planet, because they're only exposed to certain animals in their environment, in their climate and stuff like that. Like polar bear, you're not going to see a polar bear in the glyphs. You're not going to see a tiger. Notice that there's no tigers in the glyphs. There's no image of a tiger ever. Why? Because tigers are an Asian animal, an Asian feline. You understand? So it was a difference, and so the speciation of animals was not important to them for them to make that distinction. Almost the same way with some cultures with color. Like in some cultures, blue and green are the same color to them, even though they can visually see the difference in the color, but their language only has one word for both colors. And there's a lot of communities that do things like that. So same thing with animals and colors and things like that, where what we do today is not the same as what they did in ancient times. Now, that may be a small issue, but that's a big issue. It's small to us, but that's a big difference. Those little things make a big difference in their worldview, how they conceive the world, how they interacted with the world. And just to give you another example, there are communities that are still alive to this very day, although rare, but there are some indigenous communities that don't even have cardinal points, like north, south, east, west. They don't have words in their language for that. So when they deal with spatial reality and they got to give directions to go to this place or that place, everything is relative. So they have a word if where they have to travel is on the left side of them at that moment, they will describe it one way. But the same conversation taking place later where they're standing in a different direction, they will have to explain it a different way because they don't have a fixed cardinal points in their language. And I don't remember the actual tribe of people offhand, but if I get it, I'm gonna post it. But there are a few tribal communities that are that exist that have relative directions. They're not fixed like how we do, north, south, east, west. Like I say, go east 10 miles and then travel north 16 miles and you'll be right there. See, we say it that way, but they wouldn't be able to explain it that way. Okay, just like Egyptian orientation is totally different. Our south would be in front of them. Our north would be behind them. And our west would be on their right side. And our east is on their left side. So the same word for the right hand, amen or amenet, is the same word for amenet or amentet for west, which means the right hand side, where the sun sets. And east is iyabet, but it's also iyabet means left. It's the word for left. Okay, and we did a whole video on the orientation, and so these little things make a big difference on how they see the world, and we can't ignore it when we're trying to talk about the culture. Can't do that. All right, so anything else? Let's see.
Yeah, we have another question from Marcel Amenhotep. And he asked, did the Egyptians have annual festivals like the Yoruba/Igbo festival?
Oh yeah, the Remich had a lot of festivals, a whole lot of festivals, in different regions, in different areas. Because you gotta remember, Egypt covered a lot of territory up and down the Nile, and they had different local festivals, and then some national ones as well. But they had plenty. They had a lot. There was a lot. Okay. And I'm just, without taking a long time to explain, to get into details, if you were to look up, a good place to look up and to become more familiar with that is to deal with the Egyptian calendar. When you do your research on the Egyptian calendar and the civic or civil calendar and the so quote unquote religious calendar, and all of those things, the different days and different months and what the celebration was in each month and all that kind of stuff, you'll see all these different festivals and feasts that were done in Kemet. Okay, so, but yes, there was a whole lot of festivals. There were some that were, more important than others. Like the big national one was like a Zed festival of the king, where every so many years the king had to prove that he was mentally and physically fit to continue to rule. And that was a big deal. That was a big deal. They had to bring out deities, bring out animals, bulls, and do all kinds of different rituals and things like that. All right, so yeah, they definitely got their party on. Yep. So
I see our sister Monica Lamb in the chat. I want to give a shout out to her. Support her too, you guys.
she had that little jury website, and she all involved with the economic empowerment show, always doing positive things in the community. So shout out to the sister and support her too, y'all. Get some jewelry for your mate. If you don't have a mate, get some jewelry for yourself. So I just want to say peace to the sister.
Yeah, definitely. I think right now she has a raffle, something going on, and I had just got some raffle tickets from her as well. Hopefully I win, but you know, if I don't, you know, it's always good to support, regardless. So, check it out. So,
Uh,
are there anything?
Mar- Marcel Amenhotep said, I ain't calling no woman no king. That's a no for me, dog.
Okay.
And then Yasher L asked us, is the term the suit for males only? So those kind of tie in with each other. I know you touched on it a little bit a little while earlier.
Okay. Yeah. Anybody want to answer that on the panel?
I would just say it comes down to the uh, how the word is ambiguous. You know, we have conceptualizations on what certain words mean. Um, you know, nowadays we look at a queen and we first thing we think is a woman, and you know the opposite when we hear king we think of a man. But in the times way back then, they didn't have the same conceptualization as we did of what these words, you know, that got translated meant. So back then, a king, what we would call the king, could be a woman and you know, fulfill the role. So it didn't come down to a man or woman thing. It was just that position. It's just our words nowadays are kind of ambiguous, and we often don't work off the, you know, working definition of what the word is.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. But really, nobody should have a problem calling her a king. You know, because the Egyptian word for queen is really the word for wife of a king or royal wife. It's Hemet Nasut. And that's the word that we would translate as king, as queen, but also it can mean royal wife, or we could say it the longer way and say wife of the king. But Hatshepsut became king herself. So we can't say queen. We can no longer say queen because she's not the wife of a king. She is the king. And so she became Nisut Biti, Ma'at Kara. She was enthroned just like a man and had everything that a man had. So she was in the fullness a king. And you know, today we don't see it that way because we see kings as all men. So this is what I mean by we have to be careful of anachronism, where we're retrofitting our own concepts of modern times and we're trying to, you know, put it back there in the past. We got to be flexible. We have to be mature and flexible when it comes to studying ancient cultures. We just have to understand that even modern cultures, like even in modern contemporary cultures, like the United States versus China, there are things that are allowed in America that's normal to us, but you go over to China, it would be a taboo to them, and it most likely be illegal, and vice versa. Different cultures got different worldviews, different cultural standards, you know, and we have to respect them. And that's the whole point of diplomacy and diplomatic relations in modern times. But you know, so we got to keep that in mind. So yes, Hatshepsut was a king, and we shouldn't have a problem. Now we don't have to say the word king because that's English, but we have to say, you know, she's Nisut Biti Ma'at Kara. You know, Sarah, Hat, and then we have Shepset, and we say Shepsut, but it's the feminine form of Shepis, which is a noble. A male noble is Sheps, and a female noble is Shepsut or Shepset. And so Hat Shepsut is her name, and Hat means to be in the front or the foremost. So her name means the foremost of nobles. So she was the foremost of nobles. That's what her name means, her family name. All right, so don't. She had all 5 names, the same 5 that male kings had. All right, so don't we got to be careful not to diminish her because she was a great king. Like, you cannot sleep on Hatshepsut. If you can pick up any books on the life of Hatshepsut, learn more about her and what she did, because she brought Kemet back to a very thriving state, a very golden type of period of time. Huge building projects, people were fed, expeditions going on. She had it going on. All right, so we can't diminish that. Got to give her props.
I got a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
When was the best time for the Remech to fish?
Oh, when was the best time for them to fish?
Yes.
I don't know. That's a good question for me. I never really looked into it. I mean, I know modern times when if you live on a river and you fish, as far as daily, it's good to fish in the morning. But seasonally, it's good to if your river floods and then doesn't flood and stuff like that. There may that may affect the best timing for fishing and stuff like that. But I don't know. And plus, like, I know depending on what kind of fish. So in that time it was what we call African tilapia and other kinds of fish. But I know, like, in modern times, if you're trying to catch salmon or certain fish that have to mate and they travel and they do these migration things, that's the best time to fish and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, but there's a lot of factors that will play in there.
Are there any scenes that you can think of where fish is offered in an offering formula?
Man, I've seen a whole lot of offering scenes, so it's like a blur to me.
Okay.
But I have seen fish in net that I don't know if it's actually an offering scene, but they're definitely caught and being brought somewhere. I would have to check to be sure. But I have definitely seen fish caught and dealt with, even scaled and all that stuff.
All right. Another question. Have you ran across any evidence of the Remech building boats that can travel across oceans?
No. No. You talking about like the Atlantic Ocean?
Yeah, like the Atlantic.
Nah, that's like a controversy among people that follow Aboriginal doctrines and stuff like that, where they say Egypt is really in Americas and they did have boats to travel here and stuff like that. But nah. Their boats were made to travel the Nile, and then they had the expedition boats that were bigger, and we actually have attestations of drawings that they did or carvings that they did of the big expedition boats, but they weren't designed to travel across the Atlantic Ocean or oceans like that.
Okay.
And I'm just saying that because they didn't. There's no writing, none, where the Egyptians said they crossed the Atlantic Ocean or went out into the ocean. None, period. So people need to stop that. And see, and what happens is people claim that the word West, when they say Amentet or Amenetet, they're claiming that West is America.
Yeah, you're right.
But that's for the Egyptians to travel west, they would be going across land anyway. But that's not where West was to them. America was not West. It was the west side. It was the right side of the Nile River from the damped, accessible areas that had access to water, and then it became inaccessible to water, and then hills. That was the West. That's why they buried people in those hills. That's where all the cemeteries and necropolis and things are. They're in the dry areas. They say people went to the west. There's texts where people are asking. You have loved ones writing text asking if the West is treating their loved one properly. Like, how you doing? Is the West treating you properly? They don't mean America. Is America treating you properly? They're talking about the underworld. The gateway to the Duat is the West, the Western horizon. That is the opening to the underworld, where the dead lives. And
All right.
But anyway, yeah.
I got another one. So, in what part of the year is the Great Festival of Wasir usually celebrated?
Well, it depends. Like, if you're talking about the Herka or Ka is in our modern calendars, it would be in December. It'd be around December. And so you have the epigomenal days that was added to the calendar, and one of those days is what they refer to as the mess or the birth of Wasir. You have Geb Nut, you have Heru, Wasir, Aset, Neptut, and it was 5 of them all together that they were added to the end of the calendar, making it from 360 to 365 days. And so there was a festival held on that day, the day for Wasir. So it is different festivals. So you have to be specific on which festival.
The induation of a cat.
Say it again.
I believe that's what they're asking. I'm going back to the message. I think that inundation of a cat. I think around that time. Let me see. I think that's what they're talking about.
Well, Aket is a season, and it's the season.
I guess they're referring to the end of the season. So I guess that's when I guess the great festival that what they would call Abydos.
Abju.
Yep. Oh yeah, we can't say that word. We get in trouble.
Well,
I'm waiting for clarity, but I think that's what they're referring to.
Okay. Yeah, well, Aket is the season of the flood. Puret is the season of growth. And Shamu is the season of harvesting, paying taxes, and distribution. So I do see Richard Warren. He asked a question. He says, I've been studying economics, and out of curiosity, if you can, what was the philosophy of Kemet in regards to the means and modes of production and distribution of natural and productive resources? In a nutshell, it was like a trickle-down economic system. And I'm going to show you something that I showed earlier we opened up with. And I'm going to use this to explain it. This is one out of many ways to support what I mean when I say trickle down economics. And so this
hold on. Sorry to interrupt you. You got static coming through. So I wanted to make sure we get the audio clear. Does anybody else hear that static?
Two.
Okay, I'm gonna leave and pop back in. Y'all can keep up the conversation. I'm gonna leave and come right back in. Oh, actually, when I leave, well, they can hear me clearly. I think YouTube can hear me clearly, but I'm gonna leave and come right back.
Okay. All right.
So, for those of you on YouTube, I know you can still hear me, and just give me a moment. Let me clear up my audio. I know there's dead silence. I do not like dead silence. So we'll try to keep talking as I'm talking. But anyway, hopefully you all are having some takeaways from our discussion and the questions. So don't be afraid to ask questions. You know, if we know the answer, we'll give it. If we don't, you know, we simply say we don't know, or we'll point you into a direction. And also keep in mind that some questions are, or some answers to some questions may call for, you know, long answers. And, you know, we try to keep these videos at a manageable time, a manageable amount of time. And so if it sounds like I'm being a little short, that's only because of that reason, you know, because some questions deserve its own topic. And, you know, so we got to kind of keep it balanced. And so I try to do my best to kind of give enough of an answer to where, you know, you can be on your way
You had
to,
to rank the dynastic periods.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm back. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
We hear you clear.
Okay, so I was talking about Richard Warren's question. He said, "I've been studying economics, and out of curiosity, if you can, what was the philosophy of Kemet in regards to the means and mode of production and distribution of natural and productive resources?" So I just brought this up on my screen to give a quick answer to that. And I was saying that it was what do you call it? Trickle down economics, what we would call trickle down economics today. And so this offering formula that I'm showing on the screen is something that is very, very prolific all throughout the history of Kemet. And so what the offering formula says, now I recited this earlier when we first started, but like I said, we did a whole video to explain it, but I'll just kind of summarize it now. And so what this offering formula is saying, when we say Hotep Dinasu, is saying that an offering that the king gives to deities. But when you examine the entire offering formula, what it is that the king, one of the king's responsibilities was to be the caretaker of the people of the kingdom. And so the king's job was to run the kingdom in such a way that the offering tables that are dedicated to the deities are plentiful, and so plentiful that the deities in turn shared those offerings with the deceased. So the deceased got benefited from the king running the country in a very productive way, to where the deities were pleased, and in them being pleased, they shared those offerings with the deceased. And so Hotep Dinasu Waser Neb Jedu Netcher Neb Abju. So this is the offering on behalf of Wusir. But then in the next line, as you can see, where it says DF Puret Kheru, which is an invocation offering allowed or given by him, DF, him. And that him is not the king. That him is Wusir. And people confuse that. They think that the king is the one that's doing it. When it gives it to the deceased, it's not. It's the deity. And how we can confirm that is because when you have multiple deities in these offering formulas, for example, a lot of offering formulas will have Wasir and Enpu, both. And when you have both of those deities in the first part of the offering formula, which says Hotep Dinasu Wasir Neb Jedu, and it may say Enpu, he who is on top of his mound, and things like that. You know, Tepi Jesser in the sacred place and all this other kind of stuff. It's talking about two deities. And so when you get to the second part of allowing, instead of DF, it'll say D-sen. And the word sen is plural. You know, may they allow, or may they give an invocation offering. So that's how we confirm that it's the deities that are doing this. And so I say all that to say is that was their concept. That was the idea, that it was a trickle-down system. And so when the food was produced by way of farming and harvesting and so on throughout the seasons, in the season of Shemu, that's when the people would give to the state. So they offered and paid taxes, and they harvested the food, and they were stored in the granaries and things like that to be distributed. Okay, and so people were paid in these kinds of ways, and they paid taxes in those kinds of ways, to where the kingdom had plentiful abundance of food and things that could last them from flood to flood, from season to season. And so that's, in a nutshell. But of course, there's much more to it. But I'm just giving you an idea that it was trickled down, and the responsibility was on the king. The king was even likened unto Happy. And Happy is a personification of the flood. And when the flood comes, they know that the Egyptians themselves can be vitalized, or what we call enlivened. The word enlivened, which is the word sa'unk, which is the word unk with an S on the front, sa'unk, which means to cause to live, literally, but it means to enliven the people. And so the king was seen as this entity that was responsible for enliving the people, or vitalizing the people, with the abundance of the successful farming and the system, running the system. And so this is why it was a trickle down. That's why it was a responsibility of the king. And when the king didn't perform that, or when some things happened, the people lost faith in the system. And therefore you have the first intermediate period where there was civil unrest among the local governors, because the local governors, they had to make a way for their own local people. And so look at it this way. In modern times in America, we have states. We got 50 states. Then we have the federal government. So whenever a state can't provide for its citizens, it reaches out to the government, to the federal government, and the government steps in and provides funding. They may call for a natural disaster or something along those lines, and then the federal government comes in and fills in. And so if the federal government can't perform its duties, then the state has to step up. And so this is what happened in Kemet during the first intermediate period. The federal system, for lack of a better word, I'm only using these word terms for analogy purposes, but the federal system of Kemet started to fail. And then the local or state, or we call sapat, or the Greeks call nomes, the nomarchs, the governors of these different local nomes, they had to step it up. And when they stepped up, they had to be responsible. And you had the infighting going on. People were you had the civil situations going on, where the king started to lose his power. And that brought on the first intermediate period. Okay, that first intermediate period didn't have anything to do with foreigners and what they call the Hyksos and stuff. That was the second one. Okay, for different reasons. Anyway, I'm just giving you a gist, and I'm just giving you a little backdrop of what I mean by trickle down economics. When that trickle down economics failed, man, Kemet had some rough times, and so somebody had to restore the federal apparatus. So they had to come in. So Mentuhotep, in the start of the Middle Kingdom in the 11th dynasty, he's the one that came back and was like, we're going to set this straight. We're going to get this federal system back in order. The Nile is flooding properly again. We're growing enough food in abundance. The granaries are full. Let's set it. Let's hit the reset button. So they hit Control Alt Delete, and then bam, they back in business. The Middle Kingdom was born. All right. So just want to give you a little backdrop on that. All right. But anyway, the short and skinny answer is trickle down economics. Have a little bit of socialism going on there, and all that kind of stuff. If you understand socialism,
that shows how important the Nile was to him too.
Exactly. Oh, that was a lifeline. Everything depended on the Nile. Everything. Without the Nile, it would be no Kemet. And that's what people don't understand. When they named the country Kemet as a full name, that's why we get into that. But y'all pick up the book, you'll see. And when we do our future publication, we're going to outline everything. Everything. They were not into skin color. Did not inspire the name of the country. The more you read about this stuff, the more silly that's going to become to you. They didn't wake up one day and said, "Hey, we got black skin, so therefore let's name our country Black Skin," or after our black skin. Even though we don't paint ourselves black in any of our artwork, let's name the country black, black after our skin color. Like, that doesn't make any sense. None. And so, we gotta understand that. So, but are there any more questions? Because, I think we're on the roll, but I don't want it to be too long. It's 11. But any more questions? Because I couldn't keep up with the chat.
Yeah, there was. We had stopped at the last question you read, but I can't get to my other device. The battery died. I can't see the questions.
Okay, can anybody else read them? All right, let's see if I can scroll back. So that was Richard. Let's keep going down. I think I can go down from here.
Yeah, I think it was Richard Warren.
Marcel. So Sean, you were deleting some comments. What's going on with that?
Nah, I was grabbing my cell phone and the thing tapped twice. And it was deleting his comments when I was trying to approve them.
Oh, okay. So Marcel, if you want to re-ask your questions, because I see they were deleted by accident. So Zane says they kiss each other on the cheek. Oh, okay, he's talking about that. Let's see. Okay, so this is Chavis. He says, is the Merodic script closely related to Sesh? Would you happen to know who are living descendants of Meroe? Well, to answer your first question, the Merodic script is directly related to the Decipherment of Netcher. That was the inspiration for it. In terms of the direct descendants of those who are Meroe, I can't answer that at this time. So I don't have the DNA study or the population information for that kind of information. All right, so I'm sorry I can't do that. But anybody on the panel have any information on that?
No.
Okay. Now I do want to say this though, since Chavis brought up Meroe, because for some reason there is a misunderstanding of Meroe and Napata and Kush and all of that good stuff. So in terms of chronology and dates. And so whether it's in the chat or on the panel, what is the date that's given to the kingdom of Meroe, or the city of the founding of the city of Meroe? Does anybody know that, or can find out that information quickly? And I can't scroll down. If I scroll all the way down to see if anybody answered in the chat, then I'm gonna lose the questions up top. So what date is given to the city of Meroe? Anybody? Is anybody answering in chat?
Man.
Okay. Well, roughly it's from 800 BCE to about 350 AD or CE. And so what happens is when you hear people talk about Meroe and Napata, they'll act like it's ancient, like goes way back. And but when you just look up the basic information about these places, they don't go that far back. Okay, Meroe as the capital of the kingdom of Meroe or Napata, it's dated to 800 BC to 350 AD. All right. So I don't know, where I'm trying, the reason I bring this up is because I hear people talk about it, but they act like Napata is the mother and father of Kemet. And that has to stop, because Napata does not go back that far. All right. I just hope people understand that. So people need to look into that. Look at the dates for Napata. Look at the dates for Meroe. Look at the dates that are given to Cush. And what I'm speaking about is Meroe and Napata specifically. Cush as Kash, the Egyptians wrote about and talked about. All right. Napata is a different story. I did a whole little article on Napata and what the Egyptians called it. But it doesn't come before that. Okay, so I just hope people understand that. And I want to make this very clear that when we say Nubians, we got to understand, people know I talk about this all the time. I don't refer to the Nubians as Nubians. Why? Because the Egyptians never called them Nubians. The Egyptians never called the Nubians Nubians. The people who we're trying to describe as Nubians were the Nehisu, and they lived in a region called Ta Nehisu or Ta Nehesi. That's where they lived, and it was south of Kemet. The actual Nubians in the Egyptian eyes were the Egyptians themselves. And there was 2 cities in Egypt that were prominent that was called Nubt. And today they're called Kom Ombo and Ombos. Again, Kom Ombo and Ombos. Look them up. These are 2 cities within Egypt. And in ancient times, they were called Nubit or Nubt. They would be your original, if we're going to name a place Nubia, they would be 2 cities called Nubia. And it was within the borders of Egypt. That means the people who lived there were Egyptians. So it's a misnomer. You can't try to describe people who live south of Egypt by a term that was used for Egyptians themselves. Can't do that. The Egyptians called what we're trying to call Nubians the Nehisu, from the place called Ta Nehisi, a region that was south of Kemet, a big region that was comprised of smaller cities called Medjay. That's where the Magi come from. The Irim, people of Irim, Wawet, all these different places in the region of Ta Nehisi. They are your people that would live south of Kemet. But today, everybody called them Nubians, and that's not right. Can't do that. Shouldn't do that. Because what you're going to do is you're going to confuse the chronology. You're going to confuse the data. And that's what's happening right now. So now you got people who are pseudo, who are talking about Napata gave birth to Egypt and Meroe and all this other kind of stuff. That's just so far. That's just not the truth at all. All right. So we got to get it together. All right. So, anything else? Y'all still there? Got kind of quiet.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Oh, we have son of Emiket. Emiket, you want to introduce yourself, if you're available?
Hold up. Just walking late, so I'm just listening.
Okay. All right. Well, feel free to chime in. I don't want to be too much longer. I'm just going through some of the questions here.
Did we have a birthday from someone in the group recently?
Yep, Sonat Emicat.
Oh, okay. Well, happy birthday, Sanat.
Yep, happy birthday.
Dua.
Yeah, happy birthday.
All right, so you've been around the sun another time. All right, that's good. Yep. So we have the youngest member of the group. She just turned 16. Sonat Emicat. Now let me stop. Let me stop.
Right.
No. But all right, so let's go through it because I don't want to be too long. But like I was saying before, there's some people that are starting to complain that we're too short. So now you gotta be careful what you ask for when it comes with me, and how long these shows can get, because we could do this all night. We could take shifts. But anyway, let's go on. So Niwisara Kaim, he asks, since Netcher refers to resources, was there a word or name referring to what many call God today, supreme being, etc.? Or were there many words or names? Netcheru. Okay, that's a good question. Okay, first, when I said earlier that Netcher means resources, it depends on the context. And so the word Netcher itself, when the smoke clears and the dust settles, Netcher is a word that is referring to something that is the top of a hierarchy. Okay, so look at it like this. In modern times on your computer, you have a hard drive. And on your hard drive, you have the topmost directory, which we call the root directory. And then under the root directory, you have subdirectories. You may have a folder or a directory called pictures, a folder called documents, a folder called music, a folder called videos. So each of these folders are under the parent folder called the root. And so the root is the nexus that governs the subfolders, that the children folders and directories. Okay. And so when you have several roots that govern a separate set of subdirectories, these roots would be the highest in that hierarchy. And so you have to look at the Netcheru and the gods of pretty much all indigenous cultures. These are ontological and taxonomic categorical labels for existence itself. And so the Netcheru are these high level hierarchical labels for whatever's under them that has something in common. So for example, in your folder of images or pictures, of course, you're going to put all pictures in there. And your folders, you can put all your videos in a folder called videos. Now, in the folder that you have called videos, all of those files are going to be videos, but then you may even subdivide them further. You may say, okay, I got a video of my family reunion. So you're going to call another subdirectory 2019 family reunion. You may have a video of somebody's wedding. You may say, okay, so-and-so's wedding. But these will be subfolders of the folder video, which is a subfolder of the root folder. You see what I'm saying? So the Netcheru and their relationships and interplay with each other represent these categorical labels. And these deal with ontology and taxonomy. That's why they say they're ontological and taxonomic categorical labels. That's what they are. All right. And so Netcher represents something that is the oldest or the biggest or the highest or that which encompasses. And so with that idea, you can see how in context the word Netcher can mean, the eldest, the oldest, ancestor, all these different words that tend to be words that govern other things. Okay. And that's what we have to see it. That's why a standard is used to represent the word Netcher. It's a standard. It's something that is put up high on something, which is what a standard is. That's what the symbol. People think it's a axe or whatever the case is, but it's a standard. Okay, that's what it is. So when I say resources, these the word Netcher can also refer to resources in that sense of something that is dependent on as a source, as a root source of something. And so, like, for example, we have the word Netcher, which is the word for incense in the language. Incense is Netcher, which is to cause to rise. And that's what incense does. When you burn incense, the smoke rises. It rises up and it fills the room. So it's something that becomes big, lofty, and up high, and kind of have this omnipresent aspect to it. The smell and the scent and the smoke of incense. So we refer to it as Netcher. So I'm just giving you all these different ways, without trying to be too long-winded, of what's meant by that. Now, when you talk about God, God is a very ambiguous term, because depending on who you talk to, that word can take on many different meanings. And so that's something that you have to sit down and have a long conversation about, depending on who you're talking to. So people translate the word Netcher as God, but that's not really a good thing to do in a what do you call it? In a passing way. You got to be prepared to sit down and have a good conversation if you're going to do that. Because God, to a Christian, could be Jesus, or it could be the Father, or it could be the Holy Spirit, or 3 in 1. God to the Muslims will be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who is alone and has no partners, to the Hebrews, they'll say, Yahweh or Jehovah and all that kind of stuff. Ahad is one, and all this other kind of things. And those are not, they would not match in conception to Netcher. That just would not match, because in the Egyptians' conceptualization, God to them was existence itself. But in Christianity, in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, God is not existence itself to them. God creates, and then God himself is separate. So there's not a sense of what they call it, consubstantiality, which means that that God is the substance of existence itself. They don't have that in Abrahamic beliefs, and they're the ones that use the word God. So we got to be careful. We gotta understand that when we invoke these words, we got to be prepared to define what we mean by them. So I can't just say Netcher means God. I can't just leave it like that. Although I can say it long as somebody gives me a chance to explain. Okay, so we got to be mindful of that. So in that sense, no, it doesn't match. But if we have that understanding, then we could say God. You could say gods, Netcheru gods, Netcheret goddesses, Netcher God, or gods, male, masculine. Okay, so hopefully that kind of cleared up a little bit. And I'm trying to answer where, because like that's a whole discussion. And so I'm trying to, give enough without being too long with it. Okay, so, but I hope you got my analogy of the computer and the folders, because that's what it is. And I'm gonna give you an example. So, because I don't want you to think I'm crazy, or I'm just saying this stuff like how these people on these different platforms just talking out the side of their neck. And I'm being brief, but by all means, we can start whipping out some text and really get into it. But let's just look at one example. Let's look at the deity Sekhmet. Okay, if people are not familiar with Sekhmet, Sekhmet is a lion-headed or lioness-headed female deity. She is the daughter of Ra, and she is the deity that governs medical physicians. And so she is the patroness deity over all doctors in ancient Kemet. And doctors was called Sunu. The Sunu are the physicians. And she was the patroness deity over them. And one of the reasons why is because Sekhmet refers or references the concept of healing and medicine and the body's ability to heal itself. And so that applies and very appropriate for medical physicians, because of a medical physician is trying to fill in for what the body lacks, to buy the body time to heal itself. Because no doctor really heals you. Your own body heals itself. But doctors have to intervene to buy the body some time to heal itself, depending on how severe the injury is or the sickness is. That's what healers do. They don't heal in and of themselves. Okay, remember that. And so Sekhmet governs this ability and these faculties of all this. So that's why she's the patroness of all the doctors. Her name means power. And it's talking about the power and ability to make whole again. And so in the story of Ra, there's a story where Ra is trying to sleep. And he's chilling out and he's sleeping. And there's people who are disturbing him. They're making a lot of noise. They're playing some music. They're playing some hip hop and some reggae. They jamming. And Ra's trying to take a nap. You know, it's a busy god. So he's chilling, sleeping, curled up in fetal position under the covers and everything like that. And he keeps waking up and he gets frustrated. So he calls in his daughter to go down and handle it. So he's like, listen, I'm trying to get some sleep and these humans keep disturbing my sleep. So go down there and handle it for me. And she goes down there, handles business. But when she goes down there, she starts killing everybody. So she not only kills the people who are making the noise, but she starts killing innocent people who are not making noise. And so Ra's like, hold up. I ain't tell you to go buck wild down there now, or over there. You know, so Ra had to trick her and get her intoxicated, get her drunk so she could pass out and then be appeased and then come back and stop killing. And of course, I'm giving you a Cliff Note paraphrase version of this story, but I want y'all to look up the story. Okay, it's the story of the destruction of mankind, involving, you know, Sekhmet, Het-Heru, and Ra. All right, so look into this story because I'm just giving y'all a Cliff Note version, and I'm trying to make it interesting for y'all. But anyway, so now that story is a backdrop for why and how Sekhmet is the patroness of the medical aspect and over doctors and all this other kind of stuff, because you can look at this story as what the human body goes through. So the life force of the human body is affected by disease or infections. When the human body gets an infection, what does it do? It tries to attack the infection by sending out lymphatic cells, or what they call forgot the term for it, but we just call it white blood cells. It sends out white blood cells to attack these foreign invaders in the body. And when that occurs, your body raises its temperature level. We call it a fever. So a fever is a good thing. It is a natural reaction that the body is supposed to go through. But the fever is supposed to break on its own. But sometimes the infection is too much and you're not in a healthy state in the first place. So your fever never breaks, and then the fever can run and it gets too high and it could become fatal. So we have to administer what? Medicine to do what? Reduce the fever. But at the same time, reducing the fever allow the body to still do what it's supposed to do had the fever been still in place. So we got to administer certain herbs and medicine and all these other kinds of things to help the body do that. And that's where Sekhmet, or the governor or the patroness of the doctors, what the doctors do. They regulate and buy the body time to allow the body to do what it's supposed to do. And so what will happen if that doesn't happen, that the beneficent aspect of fever and white blood cells will start to kill the host, the human being. And so that process has to be intoxicated or tricked in order to subside. So the fever has to be broken manually and reduced. And so this is where Sekhmet is intoxicated. She gets drunk off of wine, which appears to look like blood because she became bloodthirsty and the whole nine. You have to read the story to really kind of fill in what I'm leaving out. But I'm just giving you an example of how the myth is created to represent realities, not to be taken literally or anything like that. Sekhmet is not a real person or anything like that. And I'm going back. Oh, okay. I see. Emiket is sharing an actual text. So we have this text from Hatnub, which is a place, I believe, a tomb in Kemet. And so this is a what they call a hieratic papyrus, but it's transcribed in the hieroglyphic that you see here. And then she did the work on this with a transliteration and translation. So you want to go ahead and read that for us? Let me get.
Yeah. So that's just a short text, and I think it just goes into what you were saying. And what you have here is Inek, Imira, and then you have Wabu, Sekhmet, and then you have you have Imira, and then Haku, and then you have Wer, and then you have Senu, and then N, Nesut, Shedi, Mejat, M, Heret, Herun. And what he says is, I am the overseer of the Wa priest of Sekhmet, overseer of the magicians and master physician of the king. I recite the scrolls daily. But he was just going over what you're talking about, Sekhmet and the doctors and all that.
Okay. So that's excellent. So here's an example of a text where a person is declaring that they are Inik Imira, which means that I am an overseer of Wabu, which is the Wa priest, the people who clean. And it says the priest of, and then Sekhmet. You see Sekhmet right there. You see her name in the glyphs, Sekhmet. So he's the overseer of the Wa priest of Sekhmet, and overseer of. Now they translate Hika and Hikau as magic and magicians and things like that, but that's another topic, because we have to be careful of translating that as magic because of people's concept of what magic is, and that will take us down a path not fitting for what the Egyptians meant when they talk about that. But that's another topic. But it's an overseer of the magicians and a master physician of the king. Okay, so we have Sunu. When I said that the word for doctor is Sunu, and so we have the word Sunu right there. All right, so we have Sunu in Nisut, which is doctor or physician of the king. All right, so just want everybody to understand the connection between Sekhmet and medical physicians. And then in the story that I was talking about, go check it out, and then you'll see a little bit more of what I meant by that. But that's a long roundabout way of me trying to explain to y'all about Netcheru. When you talk about the gods of these African communities, they are ontological and taxonomic categorical labels for existence. And so basically it's how the people organized existence into conceptual file folders. And think of it as a computer hard disk or a physical file drawer where you have a drawer, you have a file cabinet, and in each drawer, on the front of each drawer will be a deity's name. And then in the drawer will be folders, and in the folders will be everything that's common to a folder. So just, kind of keep that in mind. So like a file folder called Heru, the Netcher Heru, the falcon-headed deity, Horus, that the Greeks call Horus, that deity's name will be on the front of a file folder and a file drawer. And then in the folders, we would have labels like kingship, manager, boss, employer, coordinator, all these different aspects that are embodied in a king is represented by Heru. So every living king in Kemet was a Horus, because Heru governs that domain, that jurisdiction of activities. So running a country, being a leadership, manager, being able to coordinate smaller entities, to run a machine smoothly that consists of smaller components, all those kinds of attributes and things that I'm not mentioning, that will be governed by Heru. And then all those same functions that Heru governs that are not intentionally done, that are done on autopilot, that are done without your awareness, is governed by a totally different deity. And can anybody on the panel guess what that deity is? The deity that's responsible for coordinating a lot of individual activities for the whole system, for a system of things, but it's done without the awareness. It's done like automatically, like on autopilot, without any conscious intervention. No?
No.
Take a guess. Anybody take a guess? If Heru governs the equivalent, but it's conscious effort and purposely done, to make a decision, to give commands, to give orders, to make a decision, to coordinate this over here, that over there, to run a country and to do all that stuff consciously and purposefully, that's Heru. But what will be the equivalent where it's done automatically, where it doesn't call for your intervention, none of that kind of stuff, and something's being ruled? Okay, I'll pretend y'all gave up. So the answer is Osiris, Wasir, his father. He is the lord of what? The underworld, the Duat. So Heru is the living king, and his father is the king of the dead. Heru is the king of the living. Osiris or Wasir is the king of the dead. And so everything is ruled there on autopilot. You don't control that. But like I said, that gets into a whole nother conversation. But I'm just giving examples to this one question. Niwasir Ra Ka'im, he asked the question, so blame him. Because like I said, some of these questions deserve its own show, its own conversation. And so I'm trying to explain enough so people can understand that when we say Netcher, you cannot just translate Netcher as God and leave it at that. If you don't have time to explain yourself, then don't do it. Just leave the word Netcher as Netcher. Don't try to switch up Netcher with God. Don't do it. Just keep it at that. Until, unless you have time to explain to someone you're having a conversation with and whatnot, because what you don't want is people to look at Netcher, the word Netcher, as Christians you look at the word God, or Muslims look at the word Allah, or Jews look at the word El, Elo, Elohim, Yah, or Yahweh. You don't want them to do that, because it's not the same. In the Egyptians' conceptualization of existence, God is existence itself. There's nothing outside of God, and God is everything. Why? Because God differentiates from itself to become the things in the world and as the world. Okay, and that's a whole long conversation that I'm not gonna have right now, but that's what it is. Because notice, the Christian God creates and then he goes chill out up in heaven somewhere. To the Egyptians, God is among and in and of everything. It's just that you have file folders to organize it. We call Netcheru and the different deities themselves by name, and they anthropomorphize. They create linkage. Like, for example, Wasir and Auset are husband and wife, but they're also brother and sister, because they're showing the close proximity to these two domains or conceptualizations. Nebet is Auset's twin sister, and they represent two different functions of the same thing. Auset mourns while Nebet rejoices when somebody dies. So the crying aspect of death is Auset. And then if we do this to this day, when you go to a funeral, you mourn and people cry, they sad. But then right after the funeral, you go to the reception and everybody's partying and celebrating and eating and having a good time. That's Auset and Nebet right there. You don't even know it. But those are the two principles behind, one of the principles for each of those deities. Remember in the story, Auset mourned her husband's death. Satuk killed him. She cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And then her sister came and was like, look, cheer up, cheer up, cheer up. So they went looking for the pieces of the body, put it together. Long story short, she had a son, Heru. And while she was chilling and hiding and training and educating and nursing Heru until he got older to revenge his father's death and fought his uncle Satuk and the whole nine. But you got to understand these principles. And this is why the women who are female mourners, they are representations of Auset and Nebet. Why they wear white, why they look white, because they're part of the mummification. That's why Auset and Nebet's hair becomes white, because it gets enrolled in the mummy cloth that they use to wrap the deceased body. One stands at the foot, other stands at the head. See, all these things have rhyme and reasons to it that people have to understand. So we can't go along and try to equate them to existing theologies and the Abrahamic beliefs. Can't do that. So I wouldn't recommend anybody to do that. If you're not prepared to sit down and have a lengthy discussion with folks, then leave it alone. Just point the way, but don't try to do that, because you'll make it worse. Anyway, let's we'll take a couple more, because we got 10 minutes. So we got 10 minutes to go. We're gonna end it at 12 o'clock. Well, any more questions? Because I was talking a long time. I told y'all, anybody on the panel, y'all got anything y'all want to bring up, or did y'all see any questions?
My other device back on. I scroll back up. I haven't seen any yet. I just asked. Sorry if we missed any questions. Just please ask them again.
Okay. Well, let me see what I have, if there's any more, because that was I see Overstand Daily TV. Yes, why they can't get that part? Okay, I'm not sure. That's probably going too far back. Fitzroy says, did Kemet pass laws on homosexuality? Well, the Bible does, which is a direct result of that being an epidemic within their society. Kemet speaks against that. And so this is something people got to understand, is that pretty much a lot of societies around the world will have an element of what we call homosexuality in it. But to judge a society based on that element, when the society itself creates a taboo out of it and speaks against it, that's just being immature and unfair. So nobody going to sit here and say that nobody in Kemet was a homosexual. Like, there's no homosexuals that ever existed in Kemet. Anybody that says that is a fool. I mean, hands down, because there's no way for us to know that, number one. And then the probability and likelihood, given what we do know, it would be crazy to say that. But now what we also do know is that those acts were spoken against. They were taboos. It wasn't condoned. All right. So that's the short and skinny of that. Let's see what else. I'm scrolling down. I see people are still. Okay, I must be further back, because I see people still talking about the word Kemet as a toponym. Yeah, it's a place name. So let me go forward, because I must be way back there. Yeah, I don't see any questions.
We had one just come in the chat from Phi Lighten Tis. They comment, can we discuss worldviews and how they relate to how we approach Kemet or really any African society or African systems? Can there be a life? Can there be a life about that? Alive? Oh, maybe saying, can there be a show about that? Can there be a live about that? I'm sure it will shake up a few nests too. So I'll repeat the question. Can we discuss worldviews and how they relate to how we approach Kemet or really any African society or African system?
Well, one of the first things that we need to do is to be careful of anachronism or acronism, where we are taking modern concepts in our daily life and we're applying it retroly backwards in time, in ancient times. So we have to be mature and disciplined enough to be careful and not do that. And we have to be flexible enough to allow things to take shape on its own without being our biases and all these other kinds of things in the picture. So that's how we have to approach any ancient culture. Kemet is no different. And so we have to understand that. And that's not easy though. That's not easy because you can only go with what you know. And that's the part of the learning process, because the way that we learn as human beings, we always add on to something that we already know. Learning is a stacking process. It's an accumulative process. And how do you know this to be true is in our behavior even as babies. Because as an infant, we cling to our mothers. And at a certain age, when we start to crawl, and take our first steps and we can walk and crawl, if your mother, and think back, or you may not remember it yourself, of course, but look, if you have a child or somebody that has a child that you bear witness to, notice how babies, when they are able to crawl and walk, if their mother was to go into a public place, let's say they're in this public place or whatever, and the child is on the floor in a blanket or whatever, the child will stay close to the mother's leg and hold on to the leg and kind of stay there because that's where they feel comfortable. But then as time goes on, depending on how long the mother stays there, the baby will crawl away from the mother and start to explore. But the moment the baby gets overwhelmed with newness and new senses and new sensations and stuff like that, the baby come crawling, running back to the mother's leg and probably crying, because it's overstimulated with new things. And so I bring that up because that's the way our minds work. And we learn new things by comparing the new to what we already know and are comfortable with. And so because of that process, we have a negative aspect that can slip in there called cognitive dissonance, where we'll look at something new and force it to fit what we already know, and not allowing the new thing to take its own shape. And that's called cognitive dissonance. And so we have to be careful of that as well. So when we're studying Kemet or studying any ancient culture, we have to be mindful of these handicaps in the human mind and the frailty of our minds and the tendency to do those things. And so it takes a disciplined person, a person who is mature and has already worked on their own character in order to successfully, take this journey. So that's how we have to approach any foreign culture, let alone it be ancient or not, but especially for ancient ones, because contemporary cultures, it's closer to us, in time. But in ancient cultures, we got to allow it to speak for itself. And that's why our approach to studying Kemet is through language. Anybody who's studying Kemet and not going through his language, hey, they're going to be handicapped. I'm not going to say they can't do it, but they're going to be weak and they're going to be handicapped at doing it if they don't go through the language. because the language is the key to culture. It's the DNA of culture. Every culture is, permeates through the medium of language. Period. Okay, so without studying language, you're not going to be intimate with the culture, and that's the handicap of archaeologists. If you notice, those people who dig in the ground and deal with burial sites, and they discover artifacts, tangible artifacts and stuff like that. If it wasn't for the writing that's left in Kemet, man, we wouldn't know much about Kemet. We would be very limited. We would see the pots, we would see the red and the black and the different shaped pottery, and how the people buried their dead in a fetal position facing to the east or facing to the west. We'd be able to see all that good stuff, but we'd be so limited. That's all we would know. If it wasn't for the text that was left behind, we wouldn't know the things that we know. So language is the key. That's why we know more about Egypt than we know about Kush and what people are trying to call Nubia and stuff. Because people ask, well, why do y'all focus on Kemet so much and not the mother or the grandmother of Kemet, which was Ethiopia and Kush? But like, first of all, modern Ethiopia was not the same as ancient Ethiopia. What you trying to call Ethiopia, first of all. And second, Ta-Nehisi, you don't find the plentiful artifacts and writing and this and that to be studied. That's just where we are, So, anyway, I don't know if I answered that, but that's just my comment on that. Anybody else have something? No?
Yes, we actually had a question on the colors. Let me see. This is also from Niusaray Kayem, and they asked, were the colors of Kemet red, white, and blue? I never read this, but people swear by it. Fallacy or true?
Well, I kind of take that question to be red, white, and blue because they're making it a likeness of United States, like red, white, and blue. American colors, red, white, and blue. I wouldn't say that the colors are red, white, and blue to make a point out of it being red, white, and blue, because there were colors in Kemet. It was more than that. So I don't know to what extent that they mean. If they mean national colors, like how we would say red, white, and blue are the national colors of the United States because it's the colors on the flag and all that good stuff, then so maybe he can clarify that question. Yeah, you're gonna have to clarify that. But while I wait for him to clarify that, when it comes to those colors, you have white used for the of course the crown of Upper Kemet, the hedge crown. Then you have the Desheret crown, which is the red crown. Then you have the warring crown of blue, but that came later. But you do have a blue crown that was used for they call it a warring crown. So maybe that's what people are referring to when they say those things. But yeah, you have to clarify. So maybe we can come back to that and give him a chance to clarify that.
Okay, yeah, they had a follow-up comment. It said, yes, national colors.
I'm sorry, repeat it. Say it again.
Their comment was, yes, national colors. So maybe were they referring to was red, white, and blue their national colors?
Oh, okay. Well, like I said, their national colors was black, white, red, and green. And you can tell this in the language because we refer to these as basic color terms. And these are the oldest color terms even in the language. And they were based off of verbal roots. verbs. So we have kamem, which is to be black. You have hedge, desher, and waj. Now, when it comes to national colors, in terms of representing themselves on a national level, like as far as projecting their colors, like how they do totems and stuff like that, you have white, red, and black, more so than the blue. And you have gold in there. So it's hard to say if they had a national color that way, because you don't have any text that will explicitly say that. But when people allude to that, when they try to compare red, white, and blue of America and the flag to Kemet and stuff like that, most likely they're talking about the crowns that I mentioned. The red crown, the white crown, and the blue crown. Because they're crowns, they feel it's national because the king wore them. So, that's the only way that you can kind of tie that in. But in terms of explicitly stating that they have a national colors and stuff like that, I don't know of any text that does that. But we can, like I said, we can say that the king wore red, white, and blue, or kingship of Kemet wore red, white, and blue crowns. We can say that and be truthful and accurate to say that. So hopefully that kind of helps you out. And maybe that's what people are alluding to when they talk about that.
It seemed like he got more happy when you said red, black, and green.
And you can't forget white though. But yeah, red, black, and green is holy Kemet. Now don't get it twisted. Red, black, and green are the colors, but you got to include white too. It was four. We refer to those as basic color terms: red, white, and green. And then they had another color for what they call multicolored. And you'll see the deities Amen wearing a multicolored plume on his head. Represent that multicolored aspect. And you'll see animals. You'll see bulls that represent these four colors: multicolored, white, black, and green.
Okay, we had a question.
I'm sorry, I said green. I meant red. Let me correct myself. Multicolored, white, black, and red. The people gonna go looking for a green bull. But go ahead.
Okay, this one is coming from Will Mobley, and they ask, what do the genetic markers say in terms of Kemet and West Africa in relation to each other?
Oh, okay, that's a good question that I'm not prepared to answer. So I don't know at this time. Nope. I don't know at this time. So that's a good question though. That's something that we could have a conversation about, but I'm not prepared to talk about that. I don't have the data, in my head or easily accessible to me to have a meaningful conversation about that. Nope. Now, I know that some people have taken their DNA, gotten their DNA sequenced by the company called 23andMe, and some people are finding out that they have a very distant relationship with Ramses III because they have Ramses III DNA sequenced in their database, and so some people are matching in a very distant way to Ramses III, not the autosomal DNA, by the way, not the when you see the percentages, that's talking about autosomal nuclear DNA. But when they talk about lineage, you're talking about the maternal or paternal lines. The word linear or lineage is lines. And so that's your deep ancestry. The autosomal ancestry, the percentages that you see people post up, that's more recent DNA. And they can only go back, I believe, roughly about 7 generations for that. But your lineage goes back much further. And so some people's lineage are coming back that they're related to, paternally related to Ramses III. Although most of us come from West Africa. So that's interesting. And I'm only offering that because that was something recent that I had a conversation about. But that's a good thing to kind of look into and really have a really good conversation about that. So just understand. Yeah, and I see somebody put E1B1A. You got to understand that E1B1A and E1B1B and these codes, they are different companies use a different set of these codes. So make sure you understand the equivalent of what E1B1A is in the other coding system used by different companies. Okay, so you may see P something something another, and it'll be equivalent to E1B1 something. All right, so like I said, this is a conversation that would be nice to have, to kind of look at that. All right, and you got to remember too that these DNA companies, they have a source database, they have a reference database. So they have reference samples that they're testing your your DNA against. And so some people are get confused when you go, let's say with 23andMe, and you get one result, and then you go with another company, let's say Ancestry.com, and you have a slightly different result. And people look at that, oh man, I knew DNA was fake and phony, it's pseudo, it's not reliable, it's not real. And all that means is that they don't understand what's going on. They don't understand that each company has its own reference database of samples that they compare to. And there's a lot of overlapping, but there's some distinction. There's some differences because they don't have the exact same samples. So you're going to get slight differences, but they're not going to be drastic. When you have to worry is a scenario like if you go to 23andMe and it tells you that you are 95% Sub-Saharan African and 5% European, and that's what 23andMe gives you for your autosomal result. But then you go somewhere like Ancestry.com and it says that you're 5% Sub-Saharan African and 95% European, have European matches and stuff. That's when you got to worry. That's when you like, wait a minute, something is definitely wrong, But you're not gonna get the exact same results comparing two different companies, but they're not going to be that far off either. But the reason is because they use different different source samples. They don't share their databases, their reference databases. It'll be nice. Now they do have this service called GEDmatch, which is a free online open-ended genetic database where you can upload your raw data and compare it. They have different formulas and algorithms and things that can give you your results and comparisons. That's what a lot of people use too, because it's like one big bulky set of samples and things. And so a lot of people get compare their results to that. But anyway, anything else?
Lisa asks, when do you know when the next beginner class is going to start?
Yeah, I mentioned that early. That was the thing I opened up with, and that's a good thing to close with, I guess. So let me change over to, I still had you all showing. But yeah, so I had opened up with showing the beginners, talking about the beginners class and everything. And so I'll end our session with this as well. Let me get my cursor back over here. So I made the announcement last month that for the month of August, I will be starting a new beginners class group. And so now I'm officially making that announcement that people go ahead and register. So if you're interested in learning on a beginner's level, Sesh, Medew, Netcher, and Rodney Kemet, which is the writing system and the language, then you can register. The class is 12 weeks. You study at your own pace. The cost is only $130, which includes the book. But if you already have the textbook, then there's a code you put in and it will take $30 off. And so it will end up being $100. And so it's $100 course, and it's a beginner's level. And so what I did, I walked through the overview of what you're going to learn. And so I'll kind of just briefly do that again. So the requirements for the course is that, of course, you have to be interested, and you have to dedicate some time to it. It's not something that you're going to just sign up for and then walk away from it. You know, you got to be willing to put some time into it. But it's not going to take too much time, because this is a self-paced course. You go at your own pace. The only thing that you that will be scheduled are the weekly live sessions with the teacher and your fellow students. And those sessions are recorded. So even if you miss those sessions, you can go back and watch the recording. But I stress that you try to make it. And so we try to our best to work out times that are available for everyone, and so on. And also in the past, I've also had instances where I will do a session one-on-one if I have to with some people to get them caught up as far as the live sessions. But that's how it is. So it's self-paced. It's online. Every chapter has an exercise where you can test your competency of the material that you learned, and so on. And you answer your questions online. You can do it at your own pace and all that good stuff. And so what you will learn is things like the history of the language and writing system, the divisions of the language, how scholars divide it up, the types of scripts. You got hieroglyphic, formal hieroglyphic, hieratic, cursive hieroglyphs, Coptic, and all that kind of stuff. We talk about that. We talk about the direction of reading and writing, and the aesthetics. We talk about pronunciations. Are they historical? Are they just conventional? All that good stuff. We talk about the different glyph types, the types of glyphs, what they can function as, different transliteration systems. You'll also learn how to look up words in a dictionary. You'll also learn how to use the glyph list or sign list. You'll learn some basic grammar. And you'll learn how to recognize words, separate words or glyphs into words, to be able to parse words. You'll learn some principles about numbers, dates, royal names of the king, offering formula, and the ultimate goal of the beginner's course is to be able to transliterate and translate at least some basic inscriptions. So this course will equip you to go into a museum. If you were to go into a museum and you see some artifacts with some brief text on it and stuff like that, you should have the tools to be able to figure out what's going on and be able to translate that. Even if it's not right there on the spot, you'll be able to take a picture of it, bring it home, and go to work at it, and you'll be able to figure it out. That's what the beginner's course is guaranteed to give you the tools to be able to do. All right. And then lastly, the course is certified, and we don't give out certificates easy. You have to pass all of the exercises at the end of each chapter and take a final exam, which is 100 questions, random, but it's open book, of course, but it's random. And you have to do an essay, which is you have to be able to transliterate and translate a picture that the teacher gives you, or at least from a selection. You could select a picture to do. And that's it. So when I want to give people a chance to register, and people who have registered before or taken the class at any point in the past, if they now have time to complete the course and want to jump back in and get involved and everything, I'm welcoming everybody. So I want to give everybody that chance to either re-register, come sign up again, or for new people to sign up, period. So I want to start in August, but I want to give people a chance to register. So if you're interested, go ahead and register. Make sure you register, and I'm going to be sending emails out to get everybody prepped for when we actually start. So as far as a starting date, I don't have a start date just yet. I want to give people a chance to register. So I'm going to be just advertising for a while first, but I am going to start in August. Okay, so keep that in mind. And I think that's it. We've been on for quite a long time tonight, and I hope people have benefited from something that we discussed today, or got your questions answered, or maybe we created some new questions for you, and that's fine. Anybody on the panel have something they want to bring up, or anything you want to close with?
Yeah, real quick, because I was just asking on the chart to see, because I know that we have a lot of people watching us, and I wasn't sure if most people have taken a class with you or anybody else. And I was just wanting to recommend that. I know that we do have like the archives, and we have all the different groups where we talk about these things. But I would just highly recommend that if you're watching and you're pretty much probably studying on your own, which I think all of us kind of started out that way. I would really suggest that you might want to give the class a try and take, you learn in an in an environment where you have other people with shared and common interests, so you can bounce off ideas and questions. And then, because we do have a really well laid out curriculum for not just this class, but beyond that. But for this class, pretty much anybody that comes in not knowing anything at all, because even when I started, I didn't even know just basic monoliterals. But by the end of that 12 weeks, I was translating and transliterating with ease. So it's really different, like learning on your own, and actually having an environment where you're learning with a laid out curriculum. Because how you've done it is that the steps are actually well thought out, so that by the time it's finished, you're done with it. So it won't be like learning for a long time through the years. You're trying to grasp this and grasp that and mix a little bit of this and make mistakes here and there. It will be like 12 weeks, you're doing it correctly. By the end of that 12 weeks, you're good to go. You are reading, you're reading the sesh. And it's not just about reading the sesh. The classes are pretty much like we have the discussions here. It can just go on and on about other things. Questions are asked, other things that are not in the books or the curriculum also. They also discuss. But yeah, not to talk too much, but just give the class a try. Trust me, like just do something, start it and finish it at a particular junction where you're not running around for years. 12 weeks, that's it. So do give the class a try if you're already watching these videos and you really want to learn the sesh.
All right. Now, real quick, I want to make sure this is clear. The class takes place outside of Facebook, so I don't want people to think that they have to have Facebook to take the class or anything. The website that I just shared is, matter of fact, I didn't even give the link out. Shame on me. Let me give the link. Actually, I did at the beginning, but let me give it again. Quickly here. I think I have it over here. Okay, so I just posted the link to the sableuniversity.com website where you register for the class. And so where you take your quizzes, where you log in and all that takes place on the website, not Facebook. And our live sessions take place like how we're live right now, except we don't broadcast it on YouTube. It's a private class. So you don't necessarily need Facebook. So I just want to make sure that that's clear to everyone, because I know some people have reservations about Facebook and Facebook Messenger and everything. Now, we don't use Facebook, but we do have a Facebook group that I do recommend you join, because we have really good conversations and topic posts and comments, and everybody just shares information and all that good stuff. So if you are on Facebook, definitely join our Facebook group. But the class is a separate thing. It's not. It doesn't rely on Facebook. Although it would be good, because a lot of people who take the class are also on Facebook. Okay, so I want to make sure that's clear for the record. All right, so anybody else have anything? So the link I put up there is the actual link to the page that I was sharing. Okay, you can actually register. And again, I'm going to start in August. And Sonette Lisa, for those people who want a refresher, who are coming back, who are part of the most recent class, I'm gonna they can sign up for a big discount this time around. All right, so I'm going to get that started. I want as many people as I can for this time around. All right, so I want everybody to come on back if they want to chime in on live sessions and all that other good stuff, because like I said, there are people, for whatever reasons, some people may not have kept up with the live sessions and things. All right, so, and that happens, but we accommodate for that. I do my best. I even have private one-on-one with some folks. I don't mind doing that. All right, because the goal is to raise an army of scribes, so we can definitely get into the culture and not romanticize and commercialize Egypt and just sound heavy just for the sake of it. Man, listen, I heard some things last night about Egypt coming from people on the live, and man, it's just really sad that people will use Egypt and for entertainment purposes. Basically, that's what it comes down to. So yeah, they don't want to bring that. They don't want to bring that too close to what we got going on. Because when we feel it, we're gonna have to address it, and it's gonna take some time to address all that stuff. But it's gonna shake up some nests, as somebody in the chat said, and it's not gonna be too good. And we want the best for everyone. Any last words? Sean, June?
I just want to give a shout out to the chat. Thanks for all the support and interaction on this show. Hope you guys enjoyed it, had a good time, learned something, and are leaving with satisfaction. Dua, Hotep.
Sean, you got anything? Okay, I think Sean has probably stepped away from the computer. But let me share this last thing. Make sure you all pick up, with the exception of the book on the right-hand side, that's a publication that is going to be out hopefully by this year, before the end of this year. That's the upcoming grammar book. But the exception of that one, the 3 books on the left are Has the Egyptian Hieroglyphic Writing System Been Deciphered? A Rebuttal to Walter Williams. The blue colored book is Simplified, Sesh, Medew, Netcher, Penmanship, A Lesson in Egyptian Hieroglyphic Writing. This is book 1 for Monoliterals. That's written by Sonat Imiket. It's an excellent book to learn how to actually write. And it's dealing with the monoliterals. So you're going to learn how to write 24 glyphs, each stroke and everything. It's an excellent book. And she's going to actually start a class with that as well. So we're going to get real busy before the end of the year. The rebuttal book is kind of self-explanatory. We're addressing the claim that the hieroglyphs have not been deciphered. So, make sure you get that. And then the third book is the Beginner's Introduction to Meta-Netcher. That's the textbook that we use for the beginner's class. All right, so it's written for that purpose. And the grammar book will be coming out. Actually, the cover doesn't look like this anymore as far as what's designed and stuff like that, but it's going to come out. And that's going to be a real important addition to our studies, because in the grammar book, I'm going to include everything that a beginner needs to know as well. All right, so it's going to be really filled, and that's why it's taking me a while to get it published. All right, so want to get everything right. All right, so if nothing else, MK, you want to sign us off?
Okay, yeah, so do all for those who tuned in, and hope to see you again in the next show. And if you haven't joined the group, make sure that you join the group. And once again, dua and get an affair, which is good night, or back on affair, good morning, depending on the time zone. And Shemi Motep, go in peace.